Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Closer and closer we inch to the kickoff of Utah football season. We are 86 days shy of a kickoff against UCLA. We are 1 day into the Stanley Cup final. We are on the precipice of the NBA Finals. It's summertime in Salt Lake City. It's been beautiful. Glad to have you with us. Going to be a fun show today. Young Zach behind the glass. Zach, how we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, you know, it's a wild morning.
I know. Feel that.
Came sprinting in here to try and make it on the air.
Right? I was like, I'm like, where is he? Where is he? I don't want to do this by myself.
You could have. You could have done it by
I could have. I could have got it started.
Gordy Chiesa is going to join us in half an hour. He'll be with us for a whole hour in studio. Love having Gordy in studio. Craig Bolerjack right after Gordy. And then Ari Temkin. Ari, we're going to have a lot to talk about with Ari Temkin. LA Rams, Sirius XM, Big 12 Radio. Just lots to discuss with Ari. Big news for the station that you probably saw already. 103.9, 98.3, our sister station, brother station, our sibling station, we'll call it that. 103.9, 98.3, ESPN The Fan. Our sibling station is now Utah's home of the Los Angeles Rams. We are an official Rams affiliate for the year. Britton Covey, Puka Nacua, every Sunday right here on Utah's ESPN radio network. Yeah, baby! It's going to be interesting to see. Look, the Rams are a fascinating team. The NFL, I think, is due for a little bit of a shakeup, a little bit of a shift, because certain teams are coming up on kind of their windows closing, other windows opening, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, Britton Covey makes that roster in L.A., and we could talk about his punt return specialties and maybe more than that.
I'm sure he'll make the team. I mean, that guy is a beast.
He's a monster, but in the NFL, they're always looking for, and everybody knows this, they're always looking for the next guy, the younger version of that guy, the bigger version of that guy, the faster version of that guy. You're not going to find the smarter version of that guy when it comes to Britton Covey and his football IQ, and I think he can add serious value, and I think that he's with the right coach. I think he's with the right team, with the right organization to utilize guys that don't have to check all the physical boxes. I mean, we've seen Sean McVay happy to use undersized wide receivers, happy to use the quote-unquote sneaky athletic guys, but it'll be really interesting to see how he fits in. And obviously, a healthy Puka Nacua is one of the most fascinating young talents in the whole NFL. So fingers crossed that he will be healthy all year. Big news. We'll talk about it more with Ari Temkin. All right, last night, the start of the Stanley Cup final. Florida versus Edmonton. Third period goal to tie it up from Edmonton. Overtime, power play, game-sealing goal by none other than Leon Draisaitl, who was assisted by Connor McDavid. Corey Perry set all of that up. And what you have is a hell of a series on our hands. If game one was any indication of what it's going to look like, give me 6 more games of that. Give me Edmonton going absolutely nuts, the entire nation of Canada holding its breath. It was just a phenomenal way to start off the Stanley Cup final. And I was actually somewhat surprised to see the physicality of the Edmonton Oilers rising to a level where it's hard to say matching Florida, but maybe surprising Florida and putting them on notice a little bit that, like, hey, we're going to try to beat you up just as much as you've been beating up everyone else in this Stanley Cup playoff. I don't know that they've got the horses to sustain that through 7 games, but it mattered in game one. Florida had to adjust to it a little bit. And Sergei Bobrovsky, playoff Bob, as they've called him in the past, He was present. He was there. He was accounted for. But the offensive pressure of Edmonton just got to be so overwhelming and so ridiculous. I'll have to pull it up. I'll have to look it up. At one point, the little score bug at the top of the screen in overtime showed a 10 shot on goal disparity between the two teams. And obviously they had scored equal actual goals in the game. But it just meant that Edmonton was pouring way more pressure on the crease and on the goal of Florida. And the only reason that the Panthers were still alive was because Sergei Bobrovsky is that dude. But you can only ask somebody to be that dude so many times. I thought it was going to end non-power play. I thought it was going to end on a breakaway in overtime. And playoff Bob, with a little kick save, his left leg kicks out, forces it off the post. He kept that team alive into overtime. And it wasn't until Barkov vacated his spot in front of the crease to try to get aggressive and start a break going the other way that the pass, and well, it was actually 3 passes. It was McDavid to Perry, Perry back to McDavid, McDavid to Draisaitl, and then the goal. And Edmonton gets game 1 at home, puts themselves in a perfect position, and probably most importantly, actually maintains home ice. Because there's some fear that if you don't slow the momentum, slow the onslaught from Florida, you don't actually take advantage of the home ice, you're kind of screwed in this series. So a great start to it for Edmonton. Really, really incredible game. Even if you're not a hardcore hockey fan, which there's very few of those in this market, you should always be tuning in to the Stanley Cup Final. And they're going to keep it opposite the the NBA Finals. So gives you something to watch every single night. Really, really fun game. They also talked about in the postgame, and this is something that hockey heads probably noticed, Florida was just clearing it out as much as they could. They kept icing the puck over and over and over, just setting it down to the other end and allowing for Edmonton to get resets. And that might have drained the gas tank a little bit. When you're in your own defensive zone constantly, I mean, probably more than half of the third period and nearly all of overtime, they were just surviving, were the Florida Panthers. So good on you, Edmonton. I was very, very worried that the conversation that's happening in the NBA about, Oklahoma City's just too much. I was a little bit worried that you'd see that with Florida. But Edmonton, at least in game 1, put up a heck of a fight. And more than that, they got the victory. So treat yourself to a little bit of hockey. I put some questions out on Twitter, as I am wont to do, and I just retweeted them. I just refreshed them as I was watching the end of this game last night and sitting there with my laptop and figuring out, what I want to see, what I want to talk about on the show tomorrow, which is, of course, now today. I'm already getting a little bit of heat for it. I want you to weigh in and tell me what you think. One of the surveys, one of the poll questions, we're going to see tonight Oklahoma City and the Indianapolis Pacers. They're going to open up the NBA Finals series. 2 small market teams. Rick Carlisle talked about how we shouldn't care that they're small market teams. If you are in Minneapolis, if you're in Memphis, if you're in San Antonio, if you're in Salt Lake City, you should probably be pounding your chest and echoing everything that Rick Carlisle had to say. We'll play that sound for you actually later on the show. But, if you put the game above all, the size of the market does not matter. And we had way too many of these conversations when the big shakeup with conference realignment was happening. Then everyone was like, oh, yeah, well, you got to get into the conference that's got all these markets, and the LA television market and the Seattle television market, and how big is the Salt Lake City television market? Oh, if Colorado can control that Denver television market. And it was just it's such an exhausting thing. And look, I admit I was guilty of being party to it. I was guilty of having those conversations on the air myself. But it was and I still reject the idea that the average fan gives a you-know-what about how big a television market is when you're hosting a college football game or when you're going on the road to a college football game. Best environment that you probably experienced in in Pac-12 football, if you were on the road, going to one of those Oregon games on the road. Eugene, not a big-time television market. Eugene is the Pacific Northwest version of Tuscaloosa, of Clemson, just fill in the blank on a big brand that is in a small-ish town. The television market size, I guess, has to matter to ESPN and Fox. The television market size should not matter, and we as fans should not be expected to care whether or not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing in Oklahoma City or he's playing in L.A. If his sponsors want to care about that, if TNT, I guess they don't have to worry about it anymore because no more NBA on TNT. If ESPN and ABC want to worry about that, leave it to them. And COVID was a huge part of this, unfortunately, because when there was no competition happening, we had to get a little bit more detail-oriented and a little bit more obsessed with what's going on around the sports. And as decisions have been made in the ensuing years after that about, all right, well, you got to get as many eyes on television sets. That's what matters more than competition, more than historic rivalry, more than geographic context. What matters is how many eyes do you draw to the television. And then it was like, okay, well, look, we do a pretty good job here. Oregon's like, we do a really good job here. We could be the flagpole, the flagship program of a Pac-12 conference. And then it was like, no, you don't want to do that, actually, because now the L.A. market is gone. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. But we actually get more viewers than the L.A. market. We actually are, like, college football fans tune in more to our games than they do to the USC games. And everyone, all the decision makers, all the powers that be were just like, shh. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. L.A. Millions and millions and millions of televisions. Yeah, I know that they're there, but it doesn't matter if they're not tuning in, right? No, just the potential. That's what we're worried about, the potential. Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense, I guess. We also need Rutgers because that's ostensibly a New York television market for college football. Wrong. New York City does not tune in to watch Rutgers football, okay? I'm not telling any of you things that you don't know. But this NBA Finals is a professional slap in the face to that narrative that big markets are the only markets that need to matter, should matter. I hope and pray that the ratings for this finals reflect that it doesn't have to be the New York Knicks and it doesn't have to be the LA Lakers, that people are going to tune in to watch good basketball, because I think we're going to get really compelling basketball.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a more competitive series. Gordy Chiesa, who's joining us here in about 15 minutes, Gordy, he thinks there's an upset brewing. If that happens and you're not watching because, well, it's not Dallas, I can't watch this because it's not a big television market. Imagine if Indiana figures out a way, Tyrese Halliburton and company figure out a way to upset or even to push this thing to Game 7, and you are among one of the, like, upper crust, look down your nose type sports fans. Is I'm not watching that. I'm not interested in that because the superstar potential or the the marketability or the market size are not appealing enough to me. I don't think I have ever met a sports fan who actually thinks that way. Yeah. I don't believe I have even one time in my time on radio or standing on a sideline watching a game or going to see T-ball and talking to another mom or dad, I don't think one time I have ever met a fan that's just like, oh, you know what? Can't get behind the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama because it's a small town compared to L.A. or to Dallas or to Miami or to Boston. I don't think any sports fans actually think that way, and we have been poisoned against our own. We've been poisoned against the everyday American sports fan, the everyday American sports market by, I guess, talking heads, maybe? It's silly. I want to make a resolution myself to stop talking about it, to stop like, oh, it's these small market teams. I know that it matters from like a market appeal, a player wanting to actually go live there standpoint? Sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes it does matter. But I'm so sick of the fact that we have somehow perpetuated this in our thought process as sports fans. And I think it's a relatively recent development where we're just like, yeah, man, it's not like, wow, it's a small market team. You know, we've never said that about the University of Michigan. Ann Arbor is not exactly a bustling metropolis. Look, Columbus is a big city, but like, you don't say, well, Alabama, it's a small market team, because they're a juggernaut. And if you could do it in college sports, there's no reason you can't do it in pro sports. Because you had to ask some 17, 18, 19-year-old kid to go live in Tuscaloosa for 4 years. And if you're asking a free agent to go live in Green Bay to play NFL football or Oklahoma City to play NBA basketball, it's not markedly different. And the Thunder have proven it. And look, Indianapolis is a very big city. It's not my favorite city. I've been there a few times. It's not my favorite city. I think small market is a bit of a misnomer when you're talking about how really like how expansive the Metroplex for Indianapolis is. But again, what you're comparing it to is New York, Boston, Chicago, L.A. So, yeah, it is a small market team. And that long and convoluted tirade brings me to the poll questions I was asking, because one of the reasons you tune in to watch NBA basketball is to see superstars play. There are casual fans, there are hardcore fans who want to watch the best do their thing. And if you get a chance to see LeBron in person, you should take it. If you get a chance to see Victor Wembanyama in person, you should take it. If you get a chance to see Steph Curry in person, absolutely you got to be there in the building for one of his shooting streaks if you have that opportunity. Are we there with Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? I put the poll question out. I want you to vote at Real OC Sports. I want you to tell me what you think at 877-353-0700. Superstar talent is one of the things. Market size be damned. If you've got a superstar in a small market, if Anthony Edwards is playing in Minneapolis, I'm going to tune in and I'm going to watch. Are we there with Tyrese Halliburton? I put 3 answers on the poll question. Tyrese Halliburton is, fill in the blank, already a superstar if Indianapolis wins this finals, not a superstar either way. Right now, fewer than half of the responses say that Tyrese Halliburton is already a superstar in the NBA. And superstar, by the way, I'm sure the dictionary definition is compelling to some of you. Superstars are, it's an intuitive thing. You know it when you see it. When you're watching that baseball game, you're watching that football game, you're watching that basketball game, you know the superstar when you see him. And maybe not just game by game, but season by season.
Yeah.
I watched the whole NBA season. I know a superstar because it just looks a little bit different. People are talking about him a little bit different. I asked the same question of the recently crowned MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is already a superstar if Oklahoma City wins, not a superstar either way. Right now, 68% of people responding say that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, is already a superstar. And again, your mental definition of what a superstar is might be different than mine. I want to know what your opinion is. We had some people come in and be like, why are you asking if the MVP is a superstar? Well, because winning a big-time award does not automatically make you a superstar. Like, in the NBA, you go back and you look at all of the historical MVPs, pretty much every one of them qualifies as being like a superstar, at least at this season that they won the MVP. But if you go back far enough, we're going to have to pick Gordy Chiesa's brain when he comes in. Like, you go back far enough, and I was like, I don't know, was Bob McAdoo was a big-time superstar in his day? I truly don't know the context. I wasn't born when he was playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are guys that are kind of borderline. I don't know. There are some people that might tell you that James Harden, who is a league MVP, James Harden was kind of a borderline superstar. There's a certain level of appeal that some people think you have to have before you're called a superstar. There are folks who say, yeah, there's 20 superstars in the league. There's others that say, no, there's like 4. And maybe SGA doesn't check that box. In fact, for 10% of our respondents, he doesn't check that box even if he delivers a championship in an MVP season to Oklahoma City. So yes, the goalposts move in your own mind about what a superstar is. And the reason that question is relevant to me today is because game 1 of the finals is tonight. And you're going to be tuning in most likely because you want to see if, number one, you don't have a horse in this race. If it's OKC and Indianapolis as a Salt Lake City resident, most likely, right? So why are you tuning in? Because you just love basketball? Maybe. Why else might you be tuning in? Well, I want to see some superstar talent. I want to see SGA. I want to see this league's MVP. I want to see the guy who's been averaging 30 points a game for 3 seasons now. I want to see Tyrese Halliburton grow into a superstar in front of my eyes. 877-353-0700. Tell me, is it the game itself that makes you want to watch? Is it one of these teams that make you want to watch? You excited to watch the chess match of coaching back and forth? I don't think most of us are knowledgeable enough basketball fans to be watching this because they want to see if Rick Carlisle's got the smarter decision-making process in this series. I think most of us just want to watch great basketball and want to watch some guys that, look, you probably didn't watch a ton, especially Tyrese Halliburton. You probably didn't watch him a ton until these NBA playoffs. In the regular season, as a Jazz fan, as a parent, as somebody with jobs, you're probably not watching a ton of Tyrese Halliburton and Indianapolis in the regular season, and now you're watching them through this playoff, and you're listening to The Drive with Spence Checketts. You're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. You're hearing guys like Gordy, guys like Tony Jones, our basketball experts coming in and being like, hey, Indianapolis, they're a contender. They could actually do it this year. And maybe that sparked your interest, but then you're probably still going, okay, but why do I want to watch them? Is Indianapolis the Detroit Pistons of old? Where it's like, I mean, they're a great team, but they don't have a star. They don't have somebody that really, like, I'm not running out to buy a jersey. Maybe SGA makes you feel that way. I mean, maybe Chet Holmgren makes you feel that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Isaiah Hartenstein for you. It's not for anybody, by the way.
No, I don't think so. But
fun fact about Isaiah Hartenstein, his wife was one of our PFL ring girls for the first 2 years of the PFL.
Wow.
She's lovely. She's very nice. And every once in a while, you know, you'd see this tall guy sitting front row watching the fights because his, at that time, fiance or girlfriend, whatever she was to him back then, was one of our ring girls. And it's like, oh, you know, and he was bouncing around the league a little bit for a while. And he's really found a home in Oklahoma City, and they gave him an extension. He's going to be making $29 million a year to be like a role player. Often receives a negative connotation, but just to be like a solid, you know, member of the roster there. That shows you what the NBA does for people. But in any case, that's a random aside. 877-353-0700. You can weigh in there. You can always hit me at Real OC Sports on Twitter. Tyrese Halliburton is fill in the blank. Already a superstar. Superstar if Indianapolis wins. Not a superstar either way. Same question for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I was doing this one on my phone. Auto-corrected to Shea, S-H-A-E. I didn't go back and change it. My apologies for the misspelling on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm sorry.
It's been one of those mornings for you, hasn't it?
Well, this was last night. But in any case, I'm not going to go back and delete the tweet just to correct the spelling, okay? I will eat the misspelling instead.
Yeah.
I have one more question that I put out there that I want people. It's not a poll question. You're going to have to give it some thought and hopefully type in an answer. The best example of superstar overexposure, as we're talking about whether or not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Halliburton are superstars, you know when there's a guy or gal in entertainment, pop culture, music, sports, that kind of hits their groove and is suddenly the hot thing, and then you just get them shoved down your throat for like the next 2 years. They're just everywhere. Every commercial's got them. They're at the Oscars. They're at the Grammys. If they're not a football player, they're at the Super Bowl. If they're not a basketball player, they're front row at the finals, where you're just force-fed images and words and songs and whatever else involving this particular celebrity or sports dignitary. The best example you could think of superstar overexposure, and it can come from any place where you're seeing people become famous. The reason I asked this question is because my former employer, SiriusXM, yesterday announced that they're getting rid of a bunch of regular working people and making room for not one but 2 Stephen A. Smith shows on SiriusXM.
That's crazy.
Who is asking for more Stephen A. Smith? Like, I've made my thoughts on him pretty clear. Like, respect the hustle. Good for you. Went from being a newspaper writer to the biggest face, name, voice in sports analysis on the planet. Congratulations, Stephen A. He is already on every program that you can find on ESPN networks on television. Every major event that happens in the sporting world, even the one-offs like the big boxing pay-per-view fights, the UFC will bring him in to do some. It's like, why do we need more of that guy?
Yeah, and it's
not even about, for me, it's not even about for me anymore, like whether or not I like his delivery, I like his whole vibe. It's just like, is there a time of day where you can be watching sports or listening to sports and not hear his voice? Because that would be welcome. Who's asking for more Stephen A? SiriusXM is like, we're going to give him a sports show and we're going to give him a non-sports show. What? So who's asking for more of that? That, to me, is a classic example of celebrity overexposure. Tell me the best example of that for you as a pop culture, movie, television, music, whatever, sports fan. 877-353-0700. Take a quick one here. We come back with Gordy Chiesa. Our resident NBA guru is in studio with us for the next hour. I look forward to all of this conversation, and you should too. The Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Lots to talk about today. We had the Stanley Cup final begin last night. 4-3 victory in overtime for the Edmonton Oilers on a Leon Draisaitl goal. Very, very exciting opening of that series. We got this game 2 will be Friday, and then they'll head back to Florida. NBA Finals start tonight. We are your home of the NBA Finals right here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 792.1 FM. If you can't find everything live, check out the ESPN 700 Sports app. You can listen to us wherever you find your podcasts. We are everywhere. And so is Gordy Chiesa. In fact, he's in studio with me today. Gordy, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Sean. Good to be here. I'm looking forward to tonight's game. I know you are also, and it should be an exciting time. Who would have thought that two small market teams would be able to get to the finals? And it means nothing in a sense where basketball, doesn't matter what city you're in, these are two elite teams with tremendous players.
I know you were listening as I was ranting in that first segment about the superstar appeal of the best player on each team. And, you know, superstar is kind of a, I don't know, it's a inexact term. Some people think that there's a small handful of superstars in the league every single year. Some people think that anyone who makes an all-star roster deserves a superstar title. I don't know what your internal definition of superstar is, but we'll start with the reigning now MVP with SGA. Is he a superstar in today's league?
Yes. Yeah, very much. He's a tremendous talent, led the NBA in scoring, and he leads his team in all different categories. Yes, he's superstar, and he's team-orientated. And so is Halliburton. Yes, he is vastly underrated in the big picture. He's a superstar. Other superstars would be, in the NBA, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Stephen Curry, LeBron James, Luka Doncic.
Okay.
Victor Wembanyama in the making. Kawhi Leonard.
Okay.
That's a superstar. All those guys, they do elite things, either scoring, rebounding, passing, etc. They have a tremendous all-around game, all of them, and that they lead their teams consistently winning. Now, Wembanyama will do that. So right now, Wembanyama is still in the early process, but he's a superstar.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of the guys who Ja Morant not there all the way yet?
Not yet. No, not yet.
Okay.
No, but his talent level is. Again,
sure.
We have to distinguish. These guys are ultimately talented, but for a lot of reasons, often self-inflicted, that they're not superstar status because in the big picture in the playoffs, they haven't done that much of a thing. Anthony Davis should be in the group also, but he's so injury-prone that's why I would be hesitant, even though his talent level is unbelievable.
Kevin Durant has graduated beyond that level now?
You know something? I left Durant out. He should be in there. My apologies.
All right. No,
no, he should be in there. Durant.
I'm asking, this is off the cuff. I'm asking because there are guys, right? And this is why the conversation interests me, because your definition and my definition might not match up exactly. The people that are logging into Twitter to vote at Real OC Sports on the poll are, you know, obviously the opinions are differing because I gave 3 answers and they're all over the place. And then some people are like, of course, obviously, why would you even ask if SGA is a superstar? Well, 30% of people are like, he's not. So that it's interesting to me.
Anthony Edwards, someone like that. Again, major talent. He's heading to that, but not yet right now.
Okay.
It's balancing your talent level, your statistics, metrics within reason, and in clutch performances, how well you play.
Like an Anthony Davis, is he a superstar? The unibrow, because he's a great player. But to me, there's also an element of universal respect, fan interest, et cetera. When we're talking about superstar, I'm not just talking about someone's ability. I'm also talking about, like, do you run up to them to get the autograph? Do you need to get the picture with that person? Are you buying that jersey? That, to me, is a superstar. You kind of know it when you see it. I mean, Of course, he stands out. So if you see him, you're probably going to go try to talk to him. But is he a superstar? I don't know. And he's also injury prone.
Yeah, so you're alluding to right now more of a fan's point of view. I'm leaning towards more from a on the court point of view.
Sure.
So
and that's the more relevant
right.
one.
And also, Sean, that's the crossover appeal we're talking about.
Of course.
That actresses have, basketball players, football players have, professional athletes in general. They can cross over into mainstream where everyone knows who they are, and most of the times they know their accomplishments in the present tense,
Sure.
or even yesteryear.
Sure. Yeah. And look, I mean, there's a guy like LeBron James. There's maybe 5 people on the planet that are more famous than LeBron James.
Correct.
You know, everybody knows who LeBron James is. Whether you've watched an NBA basketball game in your life or not, you know who LeBron James is because he's that ubiquitous. He's that, like, he's a living legend. So, obviously, yeah, he's a superstar. That's the gold standard of a superstar. When you're talking about somebody who's injury prone, like Joel Embiid. Is Joel Embiid a superstar?
No, he's not. No, he's a talented player. There's a lot of good things on the court, but he's not.
Yeah, I was looking at, because somebody came at me last night, was just like, how can you even ask if an MVP is a superstar? And I was like, you know what? That's a pretty good question. Let me go look at the MVP list and see if I can find guys who are not superstars on that list. And I got to the, yesteryear, to the olden days, and I was like, I don't know. I mentioned him in the first segment. I don't know if Bob McAdoo was a big superstar in his day.
Absolutely, unequivocally not.
So
no,
he was a league MVP.
Yes, he was, right.
And Joel Embiid was a league MVP.
Correct.
And I looked at that. I was like, I don't think Joel MVP checks the box of being a superstar. So while most MVPs are also superstars, or at least were when they won the MVP, there's plenty of guys that are in the league now that I'm like, all right, is he a star? Yes. Is he an all-star? Yes. Is he a reason I'm tuning in to watch the NBA Finals? Because I want to know, can he lead his team to victory? Can he win the championship that really puts him over the hump? Not necessarily. And Tyrese Halliburton, I think, is a guy that if he wins this series, he's a superstar in every sense of the word. I think that now the resume matches the reputation, matches the talent, matches everything. I'm more with you that SGA is already there.
Yes, add to that. Getting back to about globally, where people see their face, they know their name. They always talk about this for years. The most recognized person in the world is the Pope.
Okay.
Everybody knows, including right now, the Pope is a graduate of Villanova, of all places.
American Pope, yes.
Yeah. But the Pope in general. Then there's Muhammad Ali. Everyone knows wherever you are, whether you're in the different continents, when you see his face, you know who he is. Also, like in the political world, Nelson Mandela, that they would know exactly who he is. Mother Teresa, they would know exactly who they are. And then it gets more into other different venues, etc. But those are the 4 or 5 most recognized people for Martin Luther King.
Sure.
People would know who they are.
I wonder where Taylor Swift is at on the list right now.
Yeah, no.
Everyone in the world knows Taylor Swift.
No, well said. The answer is she'd be in that list also right now. Yes, absolutely.
Gordy, in 2009, I was living in Zambia in sub-Saharan Africa, and Michael Jackson died. And it was front page news in far-flung sugar farming town in Zambia. It was the biggest story. There's like one television channel. They led the news with that.
Sure.
That's nuts to me. I was like, I mean, it's a different time of life, and I was like not paying a lot of attention to what Michael Jackson was up to. And when he passed, even in that, little corner of the globe, it was big news. So there's superstars of that level. I'm talking about NBA superstars. We're talking about NBA superstars. And Tyrese Halliburton on the precipice for me. SGA, you could already call him that. Of course, he further cements that status if he wins a championship.
Now, remember, the greatest superstar in basketball of all time would be Michael Jordan.
Of course.
And Michael Jordan also in a global picture would be, you see Michael Jordan's face, most people in the world would know who he is. Also, Michael Jackson. So the two MJs, definitely should be in those lists. So we can go other guys too, and other women.
Was Wilt Chamberlain like that when he was playing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Remember, Wilt Chamberlain, we're not doing justice to his accomplishments. Also, his problem is that he was so physically imposing, but he couldn't beat the Celtics because the Celtics had Russell, who is absolutely a great, talented, unbelievable player. But Russell's supporting cast was better than Wilt's one or two other supporting casts, and that was the margin of error as far as at the top of the apex.
Yeah.
But remember, Sean, Wilt was 7'1", 275 with waist 34 inches. So he's like this going upward.
He's a freak.
He was a freak.
And he would be in today's game as well.
Absolutely.
Which wasn't always the case, right? There, I mean, in every sport it's like this, not just basketball, but there's guys who you go back and, we did this with the Super Bowl this year. Super Bowl I, the average lineman was like 220 pounds. This year's Super Bowl, they were 320 pounds. So, like, the 220-pound offensive lineman from that Super Bowl could not be great offensive linemen in today's game. We know that. That's fine. Maybe they'd be great linebackers, but they wouldn't have been great offensive linemen. Wilt was one of those guys that if you put him in today's game, he'd be a great player. Kareem, if you put him in today's game, he'd be a great player. There are other guys, you could tell me obviously more than I know, that might have a harder time. They lack the athleticism to compete with today's individuals. They lack the size to compete with today's individuals. But yeah, the superstars of yesteryear are fascinating for younger generation fans, and now we're getting to a point where a lot of NBA basketball fans right now, Gordy, they didn't watch Michael Jordan. Like, I didn't get to watch live action of Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain and those guys. I see the YouTube, I see the old film, I see the stuff they used to put, Rashad used to put on NBA Jam. I used to watch those, but there are kids now, and not just kids, there are adults now who never got to watch Michael Jordan play, which is wild.
Or Magic Johnson.
Yeah, of course.
So Magic Johnson back in the 80s and 90s, and Larry Bird and Hakeem Olajuwon. And then yesteryear, Oscar Robinson.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm old enough to Sean, I've seen every great player play, even I was young growing up in New Jersey and New York. The only guys I didn't see play that were in the Hall of Fame, because I'm not that old, but I'm old, would be George Mikan, and that's it.
Of the Minneapolis Lakers.
Yeah, right. So I did see Cousy play. It was magical. And I seen Russell play about 15 times in my life during the 1960s. Wilt about 25. Remember, it's hard to believe, but back in the 60s, that the NBA had double headers because they couldn't draw fans themselves as just one or two teams. So they played double headers. And also, Sean, sometimes the Harlem Globetrotters would be the main attraction.
Oh, wow.
So it would be the Knickerbockers versus the Celts in the other game. The first game, the major game would be the Globetrotters versus a local team to play.
Oh, wow.
That's how crazy it was. That was I call it prehistoric times. That was a Cain and Abel times.
That's really unbelievable because obviously that script has flipped all the way.
No, it flipped all the way, right. And remember, let's not forget. So tonight's the NBA Finals in 1980. All right, so Sean, I know you weren't born yet, but in 1980, that the NBA Finals in Game 1 was on delayed tape because it's on CBS. Because CBS did not want to cut into the 11 o'clock news because of revenue. Wow. So they showed the game after the 11 o'clock news live, even though it was taped. That was Magic Johnson's 42 points as a rookie. Kareem had a sprained ankle, so they were playing the 76ers, the Lakers. So Magic played center, 42 points and 15 dimes to win on delayed tape.
Unbelievable.
1980. So what's that? 45 years ago. Excuse me.
I'm grateful that I'm too young to have experienced the delayed tape era of elite sports. Famously, the Miracle Game, right? One of the most famous moments in American sports history.
I don't believe. Yet also,
that game happened the day before, and then people got to watch it and find out the results the next day.
Remember, that game also wasn't the gold medal game. That
That's
was
right.
the semifinals, right?
Yeah.
So I believe, if I remember right, the USA had to beat. I want to say it had to beat either Finland or Sweden.
I think it was Sweden.
Okay, Sweden.
I
for
think
the gold.
Sweden for the gold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
We'll look it up during the break. But anyway, I didn't intend to drag Gordy down memory lane on the great superstars of old, but I think the question is a relevant one when we're talking about a series like this. When you're talking about two NBA franchises, one that's relatively new in the Oklahoma City Thunder, the other in the Indiana Pacers, who have not yet won a championship. Obviously, neither of these teams have ever won the Larry O'Brien Trophy. And you've got to find a reason to appeal to the fans. Well, the game itself, the players in the game, and the two best players on these teams are debatable superstars for some, which is an interesting dynamic here. We're going to get into more of the X's and O's of how either Indiana pulls off the upset, which Gordy famously predicted for us on Tuesday, or how Oklahoma City can make this the way a lot of people think it's going to be, and a dominant series for them. Breaking down Game 1 next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.
play on Saturday night. People go to movies.
Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. We got Gordy Chiesa in studio for the next 35 minutes or so. We got a lot to cover. Game 1 of the NBA Finals. We were just talking about how Game 2 of the NBA Finals won't happen until Sunday night. So the winner gets to enjoy an extra day. The loser gets to suffer an extra day, depending on what it goes down this evening. What do you think is going to happen tonight, Gordy?
I think tonight's going to be that I love the Clash. You know, Sean, the Clash is the first really political band to go against the authority.
Is that true?
Yeah.
All right.
Especially in England, yeah. Especially in England. All right, so add to that. So tonight's game against the Pacers versus the Thunder, I think the first game, usually speaking, the home team who wins, but it's that second game where, just say the Thunder do win tonight, whether it's close or whether it's a rout, is that the Pacers then are sitting in OKC for 2.5 days without playing. It's an awful feeling, and that, talk about being united. Every minute of the focus is to try to win Game 2. So I do think that the Pacers will win Game 2.
Oh, all right.
Game 2.
Interesting.
I lived that life. I'm telling you firsthand. Jazz are playing the Bulls back-to-back years in 97, 98 in yesteryear. And then I remember sitting in the hotel, where we lost and we're waiting to play for two full days, if not more. It's an awful feeling, Sean. Wherever you go, Sean, people are harassing you. People are looking at you. They're calling you, Sean, if you get my drift, bad names, if you know what I mean.
This is something that we don't talk about
enough. The mental part, psychological.
Yeah, we don't talk about enough in sports. The toll that losing takes, but then the ability that you have in some sports, right, to right that wrong, to correct things, right? In football, you got to wait at least a week. In basketball, sometimes the next day you're golden. In baseball, doubleheaders are more rare than they used to be. In baseball, sometimes you got to wait until later that day, and you can get the bad taste out of your mouth. It's something I tried to explain to people a lot in combat sports, like in MMA and boxing. You have 30 bad seconds in a fight. You lose that fight. It might be 6 months or a year before you get to try to wash that bad taste out of your mouth, because you don't have a game next week. You don't have a game tomorrow. You don't have a game from Thursday to Sunday. And when you're used to, particularly when you're used to a certain pace, it feels like that would be like, it would throw you off a little bit. And these teams obviously are used to a certain pace, even in the playoffs. It's that conversation we have about rest versus rust, right? Where you get into this rhythm and you're playing every couple of days, but then you win your series. Now you got to wait to see who you're playing against. And now in this one, you got to wait an extra day after game one. So, I mean, they're professionals. The coaches know how to handle these things. But it is a psychological difference.
Very much, especially the young guys. So the young players, say the first, second-year guys, their first time deep in the playoff run. And that's why it's so important, the expression, having some veterans on your team. Now, speaking of veterans, you want the veterans to play young. You want the young guys to play like veterans. And that's why you have a chance to be successful quickly. With the Thunder, their overall record in the playoffs right now is 12-4. With the Pacers, it's 12-6. The matchup is going to be incredible tonight between Tyrese Halliburton versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yes, they might cross over and not guard each other to keep them both out of foul trouble. The other matchups I'm looking forward to see, which is vastly underrated, will be Chet Holmgren versus Pascal Siakam, who's a tremendous player. He's done some great things as far as in the playoff series. The bench, both teams' bench is absolutely solid. Quickly with the Pacers bench, T.J. McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, Thomas Bryant, Ben Shepherd. For the Thunder, the tempo changes. I call them havoc makers. Cason Wallace and Alex Caruso, and then vastly underrated off the bench, Aaron Wiggins and Kendrick Williams and Isaiah Joe. So these guys, when they get in the game, these guys, you don't miss a beat. They come in, they play with the offensive defense. They're always doing something. Caruso, whenever he plays in the game, he makes his team better. I don't care what. I don't care. He was on. Not. He was. Let's not forget, as the draft's going to be on Wednesday, June 25th. Oh, by the way, Alex Caruso was undrafted. So was Lou Dort undrafted, and so T.J. McConnell, undrafted. So suddenly those guys are playing. Sean, in NBA Finals, and we're talking right now the day of the game. There'll be impactful moments for all those guys.
The individual journey of each player, I'm sure you could go in depth and you could figure out, great storylines in all of them. But the undrafted individuals, undrafted free agents making it in pro sports, in any pro sport, very impressive and obviously difficult. In NBA basketball, where the roster spots are at such a premium, obviously smaller rosters than you see in baseball and football and soccer, just making the roster is a win, and being a contributor, a bigger win, and being a bigger contributor on a championship candidate on a team that's now in the NBA Finals. What a wild run for any of those guys.
Yeah, and those guys have ability to navigate to fit in. So whatever the team they're on, they are able to play and make their teammates better of how they view themselves. So Caruso, yes, he's a knockdown three-point shooter, but doesn't think he's a shooter. And that's a compliment where if the shot's there, he takes it, doesn't force it. But defensively, he's absolutely all over. Cason Wallace, the same way. 11th pick of the draft, ultra talented. And when he gets in the game with Shai Alexander, they move Shai over to two guard, and Cason Wallace plays at the point guard position. And he's another guy that two-way players, both offense and defense. And then with McConnell, that allows Halliburton to play off the ball. So McConnell's in the game. He has that, we call it search dribble, where he's searching out to help defense. He's on the baseline. He's dribbling not to score. He's dribbling to create a switch and have the defense look at him, and that's when he finds the cutters for baskets or kick out three-point shots. These are all valuable things that these players, they're able to overcome all the things against them to play in an NBA game and play absolutely well.
There's an interesting graphic on the television here in studio right now. SGA could become the fourth player since 2000, so fourth player in the last 25 years to win MVP, NBA title, and Finals MVP in the same season. Add his name to the list of Shaq, Tim Duncan, LeBron James. And that's an opportunity.
That's select company, but very much. And you think about two of those guys were big guys. And LeBron's an absolutely all-around spectacular player, also rather large. But this guy's what? Is a guard.
Yeah.
So it's even more powerful as far as what he's accomplished for his team. What I like about Shai Alexander is that how he's always in the lane. I call it he's a lane resident where he puts so much stress on the on-ball defender's footwork, in that he's able to get in the paint area and make the correct play. Both Halliburton also to the group and Shai into the group, I call them, they make loud baskets, like loud. Meaning the expression is loud because they make some spectacular shot that for the team is uplifting, or in Halliburton's case, to the extreme, clutch player. And that's why it makes these guys really, we're saying superstars, and they truly are. But you know something, Sean? In the games like this, the defense is going to be so aggressive, they're going to try to attempt to take away some of these guys' brilliant play. So it's the other cast of characters that are going to have the ball to make shots.
I'm glad you went there. We're going to take a quick one here. When we come back, Gordy's going to tell us the second most important player for each team in this series, because obviously the stars are the stars. And I've got a really stupid question for him as well. He's got a write-up on a potential draft pick for the Utah Jazz. With that coming, we've got a list from Gordy. We got a lot to get to and only 25 minutes or so to get to it. So come back with us 3 minutes from now. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. And Gordy Chiesa is here with us. We talked NBA Finals. We got a little bit more to talk about on Game 1 of these NBA Finals. As we're previewing the series, and obviously everything develops gradually in these processes, on paper, Gordy, on film, however you want to characterize it, SGA, most important player for Oklahoma City. Tyrese Halliburton, most important player for for Indianapolis. Starting with the Thunder, who's their second most important player in this series?
Chet Holmgren.
Okay.
Yeah. And for the Pacers, it would be Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam, let's go him first right now. He's a twisting driver, timely three-point shooter. He's got some bounce to his game. And the question is, with Chet Holmgren or Lou Dort, can they slow him down? They're going to try to attempt it, certainly. But Siakam he's got it rolling right now in these playoffs. And let's not forget, he won the championship back in 2019 in a support role with the Toronto Raptors. If he wins another one, it'll be his second one. Chet Holmgren, we know, is a really tremendous shot blocker at the rim. Now the question is, Siakam's going to put stress on Chet Holmgren's footwork, and Holmgren's going to try to shoot over Siakam if he does back him down or if he's playing him head up on perimeter to try to elevate over the top of him. I like about Holmgren is that he can rebound too. 8.6 boards a game in the playoffs. These are 16 games, averaging 16.4 points per game. So that's the second best matchup. But all individual matchups, I call them you need integrity. That it's based on integrity where I'm going to try to guard my own man. Remember now, Andrew Nembhard's going to try to harass to the best of his ability Shai Alexander, and that Aaron Nesmith is going to try to slow down Jalen Williams. And then all the other bench guys that play on both teams, I call them hungry dogs. That these guys, when they come in the game, they're going to be absolutely ready to roll because they know that they're going to impact it. So it really should be a great series. But we mentioned earlier, tonight should be a good win by the Thunder. I'm looking at more game 2.
Okay. I haven't even touched on this with you yet. Adam Silver announced that the 2026 All-Star game is going to be USA versus the world. And that was a format change. And then he said, we'll see what the format is. I'm hoping it's just a straight-up basketball game. And there's no weird, the young guys are going to play the young guys in the first quarter and then the old guys versus the old guys in the second quarter. I don't want it to get more creative than USA versus the world. My question for you is, if it's USA versus the world, is USA the favorite or the underdog?
Underdog.
Wow.
Because think about it. So here's some of off the top of my head, here's some of the guys that are from different countries. From Canada, Shai Alexander.
Your MVP.
All right, Giannis from Greece. Nikolai Jokic from Serbia.
MVP runner-up.
Luka Doncic.
Okay.
That's 4 already. Now, all the Canadian players. So
all the Canadian players.
Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Victor Wembanyama from France. Yeah. Right. So there's other guys that we're just spontaneous that will be out there. They'll be favored, which is great.
Yeah.
Also, let's not forget, this is the first time also NBC Peacock is doing the All-Star game. Yeah. So NBC is doing the old days. This the first time they're doing it, and it's going to be an exciting time. I'm all for it.
That's great. We already talked a little bit about Austin Ainge and the hiring of Austin Ainge by the Utah Jazz to be the president of basketball operations. They've got some big decisions coming up. Maybe the most important of those decisions is what they do with pick number 5 in the upcoming NBA draft. We've been talking to insiders from the various markets where guys like Ace Bailey play, guys like VJ Edgecombe play. You have your own scouting report on a guy who may be there at 5 and has gotten some buzz as someone kind of in the range that the Utah Jazz could pick.
Yeah, very much. His name is Jeremiah Fierce. He's a freshman, 6'4", 182, University of Oklahoma Sooners. Here's his quick metrics: 17.1 points per game, 4.1 assists, 43.4 field goal percentage, 28.4 from threes, 85.1 free throw percentage, 1.6 steals, 140 assists versus 116 turnovers. All right, this is my prism when I was director of pro personnel for the Grizzlies in yesteryear. Instinctive point guard, quick first step driver, transition striker, bouncy dribble penetrator, creates basket fouls for his teammates. Turnover prone, needs better ball decisions. Clever footwork. His go-to scoring move is a step-back jumper. Once airborne, rim finisher with craftiness. Erratic three-point shooter, needs better balance and footwork. Command of his dribble, uses his body as a shield versus trailing defenders. Defensively, small upper body, needs chest, shoulder density, strength. Early ice, quick hands, internet of passing lanes. Uncommitted on-ball defender, needs stance and intensity upgrades. Needs more fight and velocity as an overall guard. Who does he play like? As far as comparison, Therese Maxey of the 76ers, Scoot Henderson of the Trailblazers, DeJounte Murray of the Pelicans. His agent's Mike Miller, former NBA player.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Miller, an NBA player. Mike Miller got certified about 5 years ago. His company's called Lift Sports Management. So I like him. Again, he's a tremendous offensive talent. He can score the ball. He can create shots. His defense is lacking. Again, like most people, he's 19 years old. Remember, let's not forget, Jazz are picking at 5, 21, 43, and 53. They're going to get some good players in this draft. Every draft is good, but it might take longer for certain players to play out as far as how they are. But that myth about, well, after the first 1 or 2 players, the draft isn't good. Let's not forget about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Halliburton, where they were picked also. Pascal Siakam was the 27th pick of the draft.
I was just reading Pascal Siakam,
New Mexico State.
But beyond that, in Cameroon, he showed up to a basketball camp that was run by Luc Mbah Moute.
Yeah.
Without having any basketball experience. Pascal Siakam had older brothers who played college basketball. They loved basketball. They were interested in basketball. He was like dubious on basketball. He didn't even know if he wanted to play. He showed up at this camp, and they were just like, oh, you could be good. Went back to the camp the next year. Masai Ujiri is there, and they're like, this kid has some serious upside. The journey of international players to the NBA is always fascinating, too, especially when you're talking about these guys who are born and raised in Africa by African parents, because it's really hard, if you haven't spent time on the continent, it's really hard to explain to people how there's no infrastructure in some of these places. People they're not conditioned to think that there's something better out there for themselves or for their children, right? And so to get out of that sometimes requires a lot of luck. And the fact that Pascal Siakam ended up, being influenced by the right people at the right time, and now he's going for potentially a second NBA championship. It's really amazing.
The NBA started globally these academies where they identify for the local clubs about these young talent. So they call it the NBA African Camp, and that's where they get the best players from the continent of Africa, and they come together and they keep training the guys. And then a lot of those kids go to USA as far as scholarship players, play in college for 1 or 2 years, and if they're talented enough and also fortunate enough, they come into the NBA as far as draft picks. And so Pascal Siakam is the classic example. New Mexico State Aggies, pick number 27, and now we're talking about him possibly getting his second championship. This is his 9th season in the NBA. But there's many stories like that. Remember, to be successful in professional sports, it's never a straight line. It's always bumpy. It's always gritty. That people think, well, so-and-so is easy. No, it's not. And a lot of times in the playoffs, it teaches you what you don't know about yourself, the character that you need to bounce back. And then whoever loses the game tonight, whatever team it is that the next game, game 2 on Sunday night, let's see who bounces back, what team and what players. They played poorly tonight, and now game 2, they're ready to roll.
As long as we're talking about, that sometimes guys are overdrafted, underdrafted, whatever. We see this positionally in other sports, how, it might be, well, not might be, it is hard to project and know what a quarterback's going to end up, from a high school level to a college level to an NFL level. What's the hardest position to project in the NBA?
Point guard. Yeah, I talk about true point guard. And a point guard is somebody that orchestrates the offense to get all the players involved in position to execute a half-court offense. And when you're a point guard in the NBA, your world turns every 24 seconds. There's nothing like it. I mean, the 24-second shot clock. So the first 5 or 6 seconds when you're coming down the floor, you're trying to strike drive in transition as far as in fast breaking. However, defense is back. Then you have to change your mindset to either verbally or visually get your team organized to run a set play, whether it's a high pick and roll, whether it's actually a 1-4 set high with screening action for catch and shoot plays. Then the next 5 or 6 seconds after that, your world changes again. It's a short clock, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now you go into what? A strike mode where with 7 seconds left, I have to decide. I get 2 dribbles and 1 bounce to make a play. 5 seconds, I get either 1 bounce or 1 dribble, and with 3 seconds left, I get what? Just 1. And so it's an unbelievable mindset, and that the better players is by far the hardest position. Last point about that, when a lot of our colleagues, Sean, say, oh, in the NBA, it's positionless. Until what? You get to the playoffs, and guess what? Every position matters.
Yeah, sure.
So that myth about, oh, you don't need a point guard you don't need a point guard. Everyone's a point guard. You might have entry pass skills, but you get to deep in the playoffs, these guys are point guards. McConnell, he's a point guard.
Yeah, sure.
Shea's a point guard that can score, absolutely. Halliburton's a point guard that can score. Casey Wallace is a point guard that can score. How about in Jazz basketball?
Yeah, well, they're figuring that out with some of these guys, right?
Yeah, yes, they are. Very much, yes, they are. And that's always the question. I had the privilege, again, to coach one of the greatest point guards of all time. We all know him, love him, John Stockton. And so what he taught generations of players is that how you have to master, we call it the mindset of a point guard, that your world changes every 24 seconds. Sean, there's no other thing like that. Even in the NFL as a quarterback, as far as decision-making, is that you have a chance in the huddle to regroup yourself. But in the NBA, you don't have that luxury.
Going back to that mental clock, right? That's something that matters for quarterbacks also, right? That's actually one of the things when you're evaluating a quarterback from the college level to the pro level. It is, for most people, the number one thing that drops Shedeur Sanders down draft boards this year, that he holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't have a good mental clock. And you're breaking it down. 7 seconds left. You have this many moves available to you. At what point can you no longer pass the ball because you're gonna run out of time? Like, is it 3 seconds left?
3 seconds left.
Okay,
yeah.
3 seconds.
So here's the worst scenario. When the big guy sets a high screen and rolls to the basket, and the dribbler has the ball and throws the ball to the guy in back of his head. And everyone laughs at the guy. Who's that doofus big guy? That why his fault? No, it's not.
It's the passer's fault.
That's exactly right. I'm defending every big guy. You hear me right now? You're a big guy. You played at BYU. You played at Utah Valley. You're a big guy. That's right, Gordy. You're exactly right. that guy passed ball back in my head, and people call me bad names for the rest of my life about I wasn't ready to catch the ball. It's the passer's fault. So let's go on record to say with 3 seconds left, you're going to shoot the ball yourself.
Gordy, before we get to your list, the New York Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau. Who's going to take that job? Who's the next man in New York?
Either Johnny Bryant, former Ute standout, who did a wonderful job there as an associate head coach, now he's at the Cavaliers. Possibly Jeff Van Gundy.
Okay.
Former Knick coach, who's also there's a tremendous talent. Maybe Mark Jackson, who former coach of the Golden State Warriors. He did a good job there, and then Steve Kerr took it to an art form. And a guy named Sam Cassell, who played in the NBA, also is worthy as far as getting a chance to do. So someone like that will be able to Knickerbocker. Tough job. Tom Thibodeau did a sensational job there. And as a coach, they made an error of judgment.
Now, whoever replaces him has to – it was the best season they had in the last 25 years. Now everyone knows, okay, well, we've got the roster. You got to get us beyond the Eastern Conference Finals now. Otherwise it's like, well, you made the wrong decision. If you fire the guy who got you there and the guy who replaces him can't get you there or better, I would be the obnoxious Knicks fan in this case. I would be the one who's just like, well, why'd we hire Johnny Bryant if Johnny Bryant's not better? Wild scenario in New York.
Oh, very much. And that just shows you that how it's so fractional, everyone's career arc. So, for example, Sean, just say that in that series with the Pacers versus the Knicks, when the Knicks had that collapse, and just say Halliburton didn't make that spectacular, unbelievable shot on that loose ball scramble rebound to put it in overtime, maybe the world's different now.
Yeah, could be.
That's how fractional sports are. And that's why we all love it, that it creates so much pain in our bodies, whether you're a coach, a player, or a fan. However, we love pain. We love it. We love pain.
We love feeling that misery when our team is terrible. Just holding on for decades and decades for perhaps one blessed glimpse of glory and maybe a Super Bowl or an NBA championship. And for a lot of teams, you don't even get that. You're hoping for a Western Conference championship. How many Utah Jazz fans have been holding on for 40 years hoping for an NBA championship, and they've never won one. Oklahoma City never won one. Indiana never won one.
That's how hard it is. The Knicks the Knickerbockers, they won back in 1973. Let's put it in context politically. The president was Richard Nixon. Let's put it that way. So that's how long I'm putting in context here in the big picture. Speaking of context, Sean, I think we have to get going. The iconic NBA players, this is my list today, without a championship title. So these lists right now, all these great players never won a championship. Quickly. Talented players don't win championships. Elite teams do. Number 25, Devin Booker. 24, James Harden. 23, Dame Lillard. 22, Luka Doncic. 21, Chris Paul. 20, Vince Carter. 19, Artis Gilmore. 18, Alex English. 17, Tracy McGrady. 16, Chris Webber. 15, Bob Lanier. 14, Chris Mullin. 13, Bernard King. 12, Pete Maravich. 11, Elgin Baylor. 10, George Gerving. 9, Dominique Wilkins. 8, Allen Iverson. 7, Dan Issel. 6, Steve Nash. 5, Reggie Miller. 4, Patrick Ewing. 3, Charles Barkley. 2, John Stockton. 1, Karl Malone.
Wow.
So they never won a championship. So Shea, Gilgeous Alexander, and Jalen Williams of the Thunder, and perhaps the Pacers, Therese Halliburton and Miles Turner and that group, so they're going to win their first championship, which is really special.
Somebody's going to get the first one, not only for themselves, but for the franchise, because neither of these franchises have ever won it all. OKC's been there. Indiana's been there. Haven't ever won it. Gordy, it's always a pleasure having you in studio. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
That's Gordy Chiesa. He is absolutely the man. Love leaning on him for the basketball expertise. We're going to continue this conversation. Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, joins us next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. We continue our discussion on hoops and tonight's NBA Finals series starting between the Pacers and the Thunder. Lots going on in the Jazz world as well. Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, joins us on a Thursday. Bowler, how are you, sir? Welcome.
Hey, thanks. Good to talk. OC, how you been?
Been great. Glad to have you on today. Lots to cover as the NBA Finals begin tonight. You're very well aware of this. Pacers, Thunder, two small market teams, two franchises who have never won an NBA championship. Somebody's going to get their first one this year. The conversation around this series has been all over the board. Most people think that it's the Thunder series to win. I just had Gordy Chiesa in studio for an hour. He's predicted a Pacers upset. Where do you net out on your prediction for how this series plays out?
I think it's going to be in the middle. I'm not taking the easy road in here, too, OC. I really think this is more competitive final than maybe some people may think. I'm looking at the line right now, 9.5 in game one. I get it. The hype will be big. Thunder fans are high level like the Jazz, and they've got something to prove. But, hey, Indiana has been one of the biggest surprises just in they're relentless as well, much like Oklahoma City. But Halliburton and the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just that matchup is really intriguing. I really think OKC is the better team defensively, but I've been very impressed in the Eastern Conference run of the Pacers of how they've picked up their defense and caused a lot of issue. If I have to pick a winner, I think it is Oklahoma City, but I think it's going to be much more competitive than we think. And probably for ABC, they would probably prefer that. They wouldn't want a 4-game sweep. And as you said, smaller or mid-sized markets, maybe not, well, let's be honest, it's not as sexy as having an East Coast or a West Coast team in, or even Miami and Dallas. But this is just a series of two teams who made bold trades. They've built through the draft. They've added pieces, but also they're committed to defense, OC. And I think that's a lesson learned. That's how I think, Boston won it last year, and they may have been back. I mean, we never know, had Tatum not been injured. But I think Boston felt the fury, right, throughout the playoffs, and it's hard to stay at that high of level of defense. But both these teams play hard. They're exceptional on the defensive side.
I'm very curious to see how the television ratings net out for this one because, like you made the point, it's two small market teams. Now, as a sports fan, that should not matter. I should not care about that. We should not care about that. Is the basketball going to be good? I think yes. I think one of the reasons that people will tune in if it's not, their team is, well, is there a player I need to watch? Is there a star? When Steph Curry was raining down, all those threes in NBA Finals, you just kind of had to watch it, whether you liked or you hated the Golden State Warriors. When Michael Jordan was playing, you didn't have to love the Chicago Bulls, and I know that's a large market team, but you had to watch Michael Jordan. You had to, right? Are Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and or Tyrese Halliburton, are they appointment viewing enough right now for the average or casual NBA fan?
Boy, that's another good one. I think there's a wheel, if you think about it, OC. In the middle is the hardcore fan who will watch no matter what day, no matter what time, and no matter who plays. And then the fringe says, you know what? Yeah, I'm excited to see this. Let me pick a guy and let me follow. I think SGA would be that player. Jokic was a guy in the same realm a couple of years ago where is he sexy enough, right, to draw viewers? And then on the third ring, it's like Super Bowl Sunday in a way where you just say, hey, I want to be social. I'm going to go to the party. I'm going to take a glance once in a while or I'll just walk away. So I think there's that 3 level. And so something probably would have to happen with how do you build a rivalry? Well, you have to play a series like this, and it has to have a moment in time or 2 or 3. How physical will these players play, and how will the officials let them play? I thought these have been pretty physical postseason games, OC, which is I like. I mean, it's a throwback in some ways. And I think for the regular fan, they've got to be excited about something. A close game. Is it the three ball that excites? I'm always the one who says, the big T. I mean, the three ball, I mean, it's a game changer. I mean, and look what it's done to the league. Some say it's been bad, others say it's been good. But both these teams can heave it up, and they've got really good 3-point shooters. So maybe it comes down to a turnover or two. I don't really buy the 9.5-point spread tonight, but that's why you play them. I'm excited to see how this one turns out, but I don't think it's going to be an easy run for OKC. No sweep in my mind. I mean, we could see it turn totally upside down. Who has more experience? Really, both teams are fresh, and you said it. No team's been to the mountain, and so this is all new. Halliburton's got a lot of pressure on him, and Rick Carlisle, the head coach, he's been around this league a long time, and I think Daigneault is a young like Will Hardy, very, very similar. Carlisle's maybe a little bit more seasoned in that regard too, which could play a factor. We'll see.
That was going to be my next question for you. Is there a significant gap in the coaching level that these teams are receiving once we're to this final and we're boiling it down to the very best?
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what what other people around the league are thinking. I haven't really read anything that really focuses on either one of those coaches, but I think they're going to be a centerpiece. OC, I do. I think they're, just think what happened to the Knicks. I mean, you lose the Eastern Conference Finals, and all of a sudden, you get, players pointing or coaches, and Tom Thibodeau is gone, and you go, wow, that's the way the league is. It's win now and not later. You don't get a second chance, and so the pressure's high level. I think Carlisle. Obviously, this is his second tenure with Indiana, but oh my gosh, how things have changed, right? But he had a hell of a run in Dallas, and I think he would have a bit of an edge. But the way that Daigneault and his staff have put things together, defense I would think, would probably be the end game of who wins this thing. And if I had to pick, I'm still going with OKC. Of all the teams I saw this year, they were the most tenacious and most consistent defensive team, who just seemed to have a sixth sense about where they needed to be and how they were able to make switches and rotate and not miss a beat. Keep an eye on that and see how Indiana handles their D. Very high level pressure, as you know.
Greg Bolerjack, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things hoop, and we move from the NBA Finals to the latest with the Utah Jazz. Austin Ainge has been hired to be the president of basketball operations. Introductory press conference earlier this week. And, let's start with, how well do you know Austin Ainge? We know his dad. He's obviously developed a great reputation in Boston and other places around this league. So what do you know about Austin Ainge?
I don't know much, OC, honestly. I followed him. I had one conversation, I believe, a few years ago. Maybe we linked in. I followed his career some, and, of course, he's been with the Celtics and Danny in Boston for a long time, learned from the master himself, and it's really a surprising move for me. I know there was a lot of stress and pressure about the 17-win season, the worst in Jazz franchise history, and then the roll of the dice, OC, for the number one pick didn't work, right? Dropped to 5, and Dallas jumps to 1. Still amazes me. So, you could always look on the inside, and only a few people know the real story. Was there pressure? Did Danny say it's time for me to step back? And Ryan says, let's stay within the Ainge family, obviously, and have Austin come in and take it from here. The important thing, you asked him in the presser, right, that what is your direction this coming season? And the big word that people don't want to talk about is tanking. Mm-hmm. And what did he say? Right? It's not going to happen with this team. I read a really good article. I mean, the Jazz are going to continue to build and grow. Are they going to do a blockbuster trade? I mean, Austin walks into a plethora of picks. It'll be interesting to see how aggressive OC this guy is going to be, right, in his first run, which is going to be monumental, I think, for the Jazz franchise moving forward. But It's going to be interesting because the West is still very good, and you can still play young guys every night and go 35 minutes and develop, but you don't have to quote tank. And that was kind of the point: was go play, get experience. OKC had to do it. Houston's doing it now. Indiana had to go through it as well, and so even with the strengths of the West, and there's going to be a lot of movement, is my guesstimate, in the next couple of weeks when draft night hits. But you probably could still win 30 and still get a top 10 pick instead of saying I'm tanking and keep marketing on the bench, for 20 of the last 25 or so games. So I think he can probably, as he answered you, no tanking, but you can still go play hard with a bunch of young players. And along the way, don't you think, still learn and get better by each time you're on the floor? And I think that's probably maybe, again, that's just me. Don't know the game plan, but I would think you could still go out and play, entertain, let the fans continue to grow with this young team.
I think
they get, by the way.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I think that, he kind of alluded to that. He did a couple follow-up interviews. Our guy JP Chunga followed up on so what do you mean by you're not going to see tanking this year? And he did clarify and said, well, we're going to let our team, whoever that is, we're going to let our team play hard. And I think that requires probably some player movement, because if you put, Kessler and Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson out there and let those guys play hard alongside Keontae George and Isaiah Collier and Cody Williams and whoever else, I think that you're probably winning too many games, and maybe that non-protected, you're only protected if it's in the top 8, or else you have to give the pick over to Oklahoma City. I think it means that there's got to be player movement so that you can have it both ways. You can go out and compete hard, but you're probably still not going to win a ton because your roster is so young. But we will see. These are certainly decisions above my pay grade, and maybe even above your pay grade.
It's definitely above mine. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that general managers and player personnel directors and CEOs. I mean, I'm going down the line of Scotty Layden and Kevin O'Connor and even Justin. I mean, they're quiet. They don't show. I wouldn't want to play poker, right, with them, because they never show their hand. And I think we could be very surprised. We'll see for the first time how aggressive Austin Ainge actually is, and how he uses or walks into really a bank vault of a lot of opportunity, but also some big decisions, as you just said. Do you move on from Colin? Do you move on from JC? Do you move on from John Collins and Sexton? Walker will be in his 4th year, proved himself last year. Sensabaugh, Johnny Juzang, what do they do there? I mean, I think there's already 14 players that are under contract. So if you're going to use all 4 picks, then you automatically have to clear room unless you trade them out. But that's the other part, is how do you actually maneuver the roster? That's the most intriguing thing, is who actually shows up in camp and who moves forward with this team who's been around maybe a year or two.
A lot is made of the nepotism thing. I've been on record. I went on the air and said, here, look, like, relationships matter in every industry. And, fathers and sons have had success in sports for a long time, in the coaching world, in the personnel world here with the Utah Jazz. We've got would you be able to tell your dad what to do if your dad and you were in the same office and you technically have decision-making power? You have final say. That's what Ryan Smith said. And you and your dad disagree on something. Would you be able to say, nope, I'm making this call. You can deal with it?
Well, my dad would give me that kind of that wicked eye, kind of that, hey, let's rethink this. But you know what? I think in this case, if you have Justin, who has really experience with players and their contracts as an agent in his early days, and now what he's done, and Ryan, who continues to grow as an owner, and Ainge, then you hope that those 4 minds can figure it out. I think it will be decision-making, and they'll debate, which is good. The nepotism thing, I've had people ask me about it as well, but I also say just look around the league, the National Football League, whatever it may be, and connections are always the big thing. You've got dads who put their sons in situations and in the NFL, in the NBA, and the National Hockey League. When you grow up in a sports world of the family, then usually one or two of your sons or daughters have interest, right? Because that's all they know. And obviously, he was introduced to basketball playing at BYU. Speaking of Ainge, and Austin goes to Boston and learns the trade with one of the premier basketball franchises of all time. So that has to play into it as well. You can't afford not to know your game or know the business if you're working for the Celtics, mind you. And so obviously he's got a talent that's given him this chance with Ryan and the Jazz. So to answer your question, it'd be tough to look across the table at my dad and say, hey, you're wrong. I'm going this direction. The dinner during the next holiday may be a tough one. But, hey, winning takes care of all that. And I think Danny has probably pulled his own reins back, OC. Don't you? I mean, I think after the disappointment of the tank and the 17 wins and how the draft and the lottery and the ping pong balls fell, there were some, high-level talks of disappointment, and maybe this is just a way to take the next step. Danny kind of just steps back. He may have been so involved more than he wanted to originally. He was kind of in that emeritus status, but it was going to help the Jazz grow, and maybe this all just works out. But if not, then Ryan has big decisions to make down the road, and there's not a lot of patience either. As you know, you got hockey growing, owned by the same, Smith Entertainment Group. You got the Delta Center being refabricated. You got downtown growth and a total makeover. Man, I tell you, you really can't wait, I guess is the word, right? In the world we live in today. Sports drives such a huge, gosh, man, it's major. Look at the television revenue. TNT's out, and Amazon's in, and NBC's back. And ABC and ESPN take even a bigger role. Why? Money. And they want to have all three levels of streaming, network, and cable. And I'm just still stunned after TNT's mark on this game, how it's time to move on. And that's kind of the way it is. And if you don't win, call Thibodeau, call Michael Malone with Denver, right? Stunning firings, but that's just the way the league's become, is that it's not that old cliche of, hey, I'm going to give the coach 4 years to kind of let develop these guys. Now, it's got to be now. And Will Hardy signed OC that extension probably for a reason, right? At least he's guaranteed money if the Jazz decide to go another direction.
Well, I think that, the wait-and-see mentality is the right one, because any strong reaction you have before Austin Ainge has even made decisions in the job is you got to give it a chance. And we're all willing, I think, to give it a chance. I think that people are not willing to give another tanking season a chance, but you probably don't have much choice. To your earlier point, I don't think it's going to be the worst record in the NBA next year, but we'll see how it works out. Maybe the league will manipulate so that Devonta lands with the Utah Jazz because he's going to be just down the road at BYU.
Isn't that crazy? And it just still amazes me that Dallas went through the Kyrie ACL. You got the Luka near riot with Maverick fans to go to Los Angeles. AD gets hurt, right after he comes in after a half, and then all of a sudden 1.8% chance of getting the number one.
Ridiculous.
Which is most likely Cooper. I just sat back that night and thought, wow, how does this happen? But it did. In fact, all three teams that finished with the 14% chance, they went 4, 5, 6. And so it just tells you, and maybe, again, Ryan understood this, and Danny as well, go play and let it fall. However it goes, you're still going to gain experience in 82 games. And you know what? It looks better, too, I think. You may want to do it once, and the Jazz did. They rolled the dice and didn't come up with Cooper. But now you go play with what you have, and hopefully you can make some big decisions if he fits or he doesn't. I remember Will Hardy his first year said, look, this is a tough league. You got to be mentally tough and you have to be dedicated. Some of them will make it, some of them won't. That's just plain and simple. And I think they're at that point now where a couple of these guys are going into their fourth year under Will, and many in their third year, and you're going to see some decisions that are going to be tough to make on who stays and who goes.
Bowler, you're the man. I appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you.
Hey, you bet. Talk soon, man.
Greg Bowlerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, kind enough to give us some time here on a Thursday, the day of the NBA Finals starting. We are your home of the NBA playoffs and the NBA Finals on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, got a PGA Tour leaderboard update, and Ari Temkin set to join us as we get rolling with hour number 3. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Ari Temkin's going to join us in about 5 minutes. For real quick, we need a PGA Tour leaderboard update brought to you by our friends at Uinta Golf. You want a little bit more control, a little bit more distance. They got the Pro V1 and the Pro V1X available right now at Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Young Zach, what's the PGA Tour leaderboard update look like?
Yeah, so Canadian Open starting today. Most players have finished their first round. Danny Willett is still going, but there is a four-way tie in first. Taylor Pendrith in first, Alex Smalley in second of the first tie, Paul Peterson, and obviously Danny Willett, who's still going. He's only made it through 10 holes. They're all at -5 right now. And then we have a 12-way tie for fifth. Rico Hoey, Sam Burns, Nick Taylor, Tomas Dietrich, Harry Hall, Victor Perez, Jackson Suber, Cameron Champ, Justin Rose, and Trey Mullinax, all at -4 right now.
All right. Canadian Open. That leaderboard update brought to you by our friends at Uinta Golf. Go down, tell them that OC sent you. Grab some Pro V1, Pro V1X, and reminder to all of you out there, Father's Day is coming up. That is a very safe bet. If your dad or a dad that you know is into golf, just grab them some golf balls. The fancy ones, the expensive ones. And then they'll get mad when they lose them. All right, Ari Temkin joins us next. We'll talk some Big 12 football. We'll talk about the big news that our ESPN radio network right here in Salt Lake City is now going to be an LA Rams affiliate. Sean O'Connell Show continues next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
He gets a first down to the 13-yard line of the Vikings. Shotgun snap to Stafford on 1st and 10. Sidearm throw at the 10. Caught, spinning past the 5, in for the touchdown. Davis Allen caught that ball outside the hash mark on a spin. The bell tie grab and the run, and a touchdown for the Rams. A 13-yard strike.
That was a Matthew Stafford 13-yard touchdown pass and an NFC wildcard win against the Vikings. That sound courtesy of Westwood One, Kevin Harlan, Kurt Warner on that call. And you're going to hear Rams football right here on our ESPN radio network in Utah. 103.9, 98.3 ESPN. The Fan is now Utah's home of the LA Rams. The Fighting Puka Nakuas and Britton Coveys have a home every Sunday, and I suppose occasionally on Mondays, in Utah. Ari Temkin joins us to talk about all of it. We'll touch on some Big 12 as well. Ari, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you, sir?
What's up, OC? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. This is exciting for us here in Salt Lake City. You know, we're a small market, but it feels like we got a little connection now to LA, especially with some beloved players from BYU, from Utah, making their hay down in LA. And fans are going to be able to listen to every game on 103.9 and 98.3, which is, of course, our sibling station. I don't know if I'm supposed to call it a brother or sister station, so we're going sibling station.
I like that. Sibling station's perfect. No, and I appreciate having me on. It's funny, you and I used to work together, on college sports radio on Sirius XM, and now Big 12 radio is a part of TuneIn, where I'm, co-hosting a show now for the Big 12 and Big 12 radio. And then in addition, I work for a company called Good Karma Brands. And so in that role, I'm looking for affiliates for the Rams and Lakers. And so this was a really good and perfect marriage, obviously with Puka blowing up for the Rams. And as you mentioned, Britton Covey. And look, I mean, there's so many BYU and Utah football players across the National Football League. So, it's those two right now, but who knows what the future holds, and especially because I'm fairly optimistic about both BYU and Utah heading into the upcoming season.
You will probably find less enthusiasm about potentially being a Lakers affiliate here in Salt Lake City, because people.
I can imagine. I can imagine. And and if I'm being quite honest, like basketball on the radio just doesn't work as well. It's funny how like baseball and football. I mean, the NFL is just the golden goose, and college football, like football, is king in America. So, it's an easy spot in terms of finding stations that want to air NFL football, because it's just such a huge piece to the American sports consciousness.
Let's talk about a couple of those players that we touched on. Look, I know you got a lot going on, and Britton Covey is a guy who is like, we love him here. I think Philadelphia learned to love him, but he's not even like an automatic going to make the roster type guy. As much as we love him and know what kind of a value he can add to a team, it's going to be a battle for him to make this Rams roster. How do you like his chances?
No, I mean, and look, he signed, right? So they foresaw some sort of a role with him, there. And I mean, this is a guy that's made the most out of everything he's gotten from an NFL career so far. And so I expect him to do the same. Like, I mean, this, OC, you've played at the highest level. Like, talent is fairly equal across the board. Like, there are obviously some distinctions and differences there, but when you're playing, Power 5 or Power 4 football, and then you're playing in the NFL, like, the talent discrepancy is not the largest. It's the work ethic. It's the mentality between the years that sets those guys apart. And, I think for guys like Britton Covey, I mean, I used to work with a guy, Fozzie Whitaker, who, at one point was thought to be a potential high draft pick as a running back out of Texas. He tore his ACLs last year, went undrafted, and, turned out a pretty successful long NFL career in which he played for a Super Bowl for the Carolina Panthers. So, again, you see certainly 4 and 5 stars have the best opportunity and chance. But between the ears, work ethic, mentality, those kind of things matter so much more than the physical talent pieces. And I think Covey's a great example of that. And, look, there's definitely a logjam at wide receiver. There's a guy that played at Texas, Jordan Whittington, who was, pretty prominent player for them last year because of injuries at the wide receiver position. But he was a late draft pick that may not necessarily find his foothold. So, I think there are opportunities this year, especially because of some injuries last year at the receiver position. And again, I think based on the decision to sign him, there's some semblance that there was a role for him. And if anybody can find a good role, I think, Sean McVay, for my money, is the best coach in the National Football League. He knows how to get guys in good position. And, I think one of the things that's underrated about the Rams, like, they're quietly one of the most consistent winning franchises in the NFL right now. I mean, they've been to the playoffs 5 of the last 6 seasons. They've been to 2 Super Bowls in that time period, won one, lost another. So, I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a franchise right now that's winning at the level of the Rams.
I actually that's my favorite thing about the Rams as a fit for Britton Covey, that Sean McVay is the head coach. I mean, I know it's not supposed to matter, but I promise that Sean McVay probably sees a little bit of himself in Britton Covey, right?
Totally.
Hell, they're practically the same age, so like it's I think that's going to be really good for Covey. Last thing on him, if all he is elite at, and he is elite at this, is returning kicks and punts, will the Rams preserve a roster spot just for a guy who can do that?
That's a really good question. I'd like to say yes, but I do think, with roster spots being as valuable as they are across an NFL roster, you do have to be multifaceted, or you have to be very elite at the one thing you do. Now, Covey can do that. Yeah, I think it's more about punt return. Obviously, we know with the way the situation the kick return game is right now, it feels like if he can make an impact on punt return, that would be huge. Because, I mean, traditionally you think of guys that can make a roster in any position, let's say defensive back or wide receiver. If they're not going to see the field, on as a wide receiver or defensive back, you've got to be able to play special teams. Like, that's the huge differentiator in terms of making rosters. Well, he's going to be making this team for special teams, so then you have to wonder about where else can he contribute. And I do wonder if they see spot for him on the field as a receiver, and even if it's limited. And again, we know injuries are such a huge part of this, so that plays a role too, right? Like, if he makes the roster and they feel like he can contribute as a receiver, but don't necessarily need him to, but once there's some injuries or whatever happens, suddenly he's called upon, they're going to have confidence in him, that he can. Again, I think based on the fact that he signed a contract with the Rams, probably tells me that they view him in a specific role that I think gives him a leg up to make this team.
All right, Temkin, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Right now we're talking Rams football because we made the announcement that our sibling station is going to be a Rams affiliate in Salt Lake City for this upcoming NFL season. So all these Rams games on the schedule this year, you're going to be able to hear them right here in the ESPN radio network family. Staying with the wide receivers and a guy that has emerged as a star, if he can stay healthy, what is Puka Nacua? Where is Puka Nacua among the elite wide receivers in the NFL?
I think he's one of the more underrated ones because he doesn't seem to be viewed on that same level as, the most elite receivers in the NFL. Now, is he a Justin Jefferson? Is he, I think he's just a different player than that, and which is why maybe he's not recognized that way. But he is, as we know, just a huge play waiting to happen, I think obviously health notwithstanding, like, now this is his team. He came and was drafted into a situation with the Rams where, Cooper Kupp was the guy, and, anything else that was brought to the table was extra, and now he's in that role. So it'd be very interesting to see with Cooper Kupp exiting. That was, I think, for Rams fans, pretty emotional in terms of, like, the connection, winning a Super Bowl, those kinds of things. So, now the mantle's been passed, and he's the guy for the Rams. So I think that will lead to probably more widespread love across the league. But he's obviously got to show it, and he's got to stay healthy. But I mean, he's a big time player. He's a huge playmaker waiting to happen. I mean, when he gets open down the field and gets the ball in his hands, I mean, he's a threat to score from anywhere. So it's been fun to watch him. It's funny because on Big 12 radio, the year he was drafted, we interviewed a handful of guys after they finished up in the Big 12, and I mean, he was a guy, and I think at this point he didn't even play in the Big 12, but it was BYU was coming into the Big 12 at that point, and it's just a fun guy to talk to, and you don't really think much of it, and suddenly he just blows up as a rookie, and you're like, oh my God, this guy, he just has the right mentality. I mean, I think we talk about those things, the intangibles that make NFL players great and keep them having longevity in the league, which is so difficult to come by. The average career is like 2 years. He's just got all the pieces, I think, to be successful, the physical traits and then the mental piece too.
You already touched on this point, but the Rams are fascinating. And look, I'm a 49ers fan, so not always fascinating in my favorite way. But when they won their Super Bowl, it was supposed to be, hey, we're all in. We're going to get this thing done. They did get it done. And then my expectation was, all right, well, you cashed in. Now there's going to be a significant fall off. This thing's going to just dump off a cliff. Whitworth retired. Aaron Donald retired. And so they're still here. Matthew Stafford, how much gas is left in the tank? Like, he seems to be fresh and enjoying football and all that. And McVay's obviously a great coach. I mean, what am I missing? How have they been able to stay so consistent? And I know it's not Super Bowl after Super Bowl. It's not a Chiefs-level dynasty. They're not doing what Philadelphia is doing right now. But they're here. They're around when, they lost two of the best players in franchise history to retirement after that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. So not only that, but you mentioned, they really mortgaged their future and traded away high-level draft picks in order to win that Super Bowl by acquiring certain players. And so they went a couple of years without a first-round pick, and I think they've done a really good job of drafting and developing. That's maybe one of the more underrated pieces to their success. They lose Aaron Donald, who's arguably the greatest defensive player ever. For my money, I'll still take Lawrence Taylor, but still, Donald was an absolute disruptive force. And then they go draft a guy like Jared Verse in the first round, and he's not Aaron Donald, but he is a game wrecker. And so it's almost like you go from Donald to Verse, and while again different player, and certainly Verse has to continue to earn it to be on that level. Like, you got a guy that looks like he's the next piece in terms of being a total game wrecker for your defense along your defensive line, which is a game changer when you have a guy like that. So, they have done such a good job in drafting and developing, because especially when you don't have first-round picks consistently, the way I always view OC drafts is, you got to hit with starters in the first 3 rounds. If you're judging this based on your team is going to have 1 pick in every round, that's 7 picks. So for me, you got to get a starter in the first 3 rounds. And then if you hit and get 1 starter or rotational piece, I say starter, it could be a nickel corner, right? Like rotational piece, 4, 5, 6, or 7. Just hit on 1 more. You're at basically a 50% or higher hit rate. That's a successful draft. Well, the Rams have consistently done that, and they've gone deep into drafts. They found undrafted players that become major contributors. That's a testament to their organization. They've got great scouting, great development, great general manager. Again, the Eagles, I think, and Chiefs, to your point, stand out maybe more so because, well, the Eagles just won 1 and have been in 2, and the Chiefs have won, obviously 2 of the last 3. But, the Rams are right there with them in terms of, the right GM that understands drafting and developing more than anything. And, you just look at the roster, it's kind of magnificent how they've been able to put it together. And, yeah, they lost the Super Bowl in 2018. They missed the playoffs. And then they lost the divisional game the next year. And then in 2021, they won the Super Bowl, missed the playoffs in 2022, where everybody expects the fall off. And all they've done since then is rebound. They had an unbelievable finish to the season in 23 when they were dead to rights. I think they won like 6 straight to make the playoffs. And then this past year, obviously, with winning the division going away, they showed that this is kind of a second life of an organization and a franchise that, felt like after they won the Super Bowl had probably topped out. But they've been, incredibly consistent in terms of being a playoff team and again, having appeared in the playoffs as often as they have, and then, the Super Bowl twice in the last 7 years.
Little breaking news that you've probably seen this already. Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers ahead of next week's opening of minicamp for the Steelers. A lot of us thought this was an eventuality. I thought it was crazy that the Steelers waited this long. What kind of impact does Aaron Rodgers still have in this NFL?
It's hard to believe he has much of an impact. He seems to be making headlines more so for what he's doing off the field than what he's doing on the field. He's 41 years old. He's going to be 42 in season. His birthday's in December. He's going to be 42 years old. And, while he played decently last year, he's not even close to the level of the quarterback he once was. And, again, he's 42. So it makes sense that he wouldn't be playing at that level. The dude has taken a lot of hits. He's had a lot of injuries. He's been put back together and prodded and poked. And, I think the expectations for the Jets last year were not met. This very much feels like the end of Brett Favre's career, which is sort of funny because I think obviously the similarities there, both Packers quarterbacks, both great quarterbacks who only won 1 Super Bowl with the Packers. And I say that as a Bears fan very lovingly because they probably should have won more than 2 Super Bowls with those 2 quarterbacks over the last 3 decades that they played. And then personality-wise, they couldn't be more different. But, it just feels like he's a big hit away from having his career end. it's crazy to think of how much consistency the Steelers had at quarterback, how bad they are at the position right now, and you could not go into the season with former Big 12 quarterback Oklahoma State Mason Rudolph as your starting quarterback. So, they needed to make a move like this. To your point, I don't know why they waited on it. It wasn't like suddenly a new quarterback market was going to materialize out of thin air. But yeah, this finally comes to fruition, and I'm sure Steelers fans will be horribly optimistic, and I just don't see any reason to be, considering his age, considering his recent history, and considering a guy like ayahuasca, which there's nothing wrong with that, but
All right, Tepkin, for a couple more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Now let's talk some Big 12 football. I was more excited to bring you on to discuss this even than the Rams development, because we're a month away from Big 12 Media Days down in Texas. The predictions for who's going to actually win this league are all over the place. I know Vegas thinks it's an Arizona State league again. BYU had a great season last year, and now there's a huge question about their quarterback room, which I think changes their prognostication. The Utes are, I think, mostly overlooked here, and I understand why that's happening. But you said at the beginning of this conversation you were optimistic about both Utah and BYU. Let's start with the Utes. Tell me why.
Yeah, I mean, so when you survey this league, number one, this league needs to have more consistency at the top. And obviously, last year is a good indication that it hasn't. I mean, it's a league of parity. And when you have a league where a team that finishes, last one year can then go and be, the conference champion the next year, you have issues relative to what the SEC and the Big Ten are. Now, with that being said, I do think Utah is going to find itself in the top 5 of this league when it's all said and done. I think from a preseason standpoint, they won't be included there, but I absolutely will in my ballot. Number one, obviously there's a history here that suggests that this is not a program that's going to be down for multiple years. Number two, I love the Devin Dampier piece. I mean, I think him, along with bringing his offensive coordinator in, a lot of times you bring in a new quarterback at the portal, and now they're trying to learn a new offense. That's not obviously the case for Utah, where the quarterback is now trying to teach the rest of the offense to the rest of the offense. So, I think you start there. And then look, I mean, this has been a program that has, I think, created a brand around, smash mouth defensive football and being able to run over you. And while I'm sure fans would like to see a more pass happy offense, I mean, with what Devin Dampier has done in his history, with what I expect this defense to be, and then of course, with what they should have at the running game, I mean, I think that there's something from a Utah brand perspective to like. And again, I mean, I don't care about who's the names are on defense. Like, this is a program that at this point in time has proven, regardless of personnel, they're going to play a certain style of defense and be very successful in doing so at playing that defense. And when you consider how bad their offense was last year, when you consider how bad their offense has been at times over the last few years, and yet their defense doesn't check out at any game at any time, it's insane to me. Like, it's human nature that you check out when your offense is that bad, when your defense is constantly on the field. So the fact that the defense has hung on the way that it has, and the fact that I think, again, this defense should be really good with an offense that, I mean, it won't take much to improve upon what the offense looked like last year. I think that this Utah team should return to what it's been. And I don't think that's necessarily bad for league in terms of parity, because I think Utah, again, there's a perception of Utah nationally where, okay, it was a one-year blip, but now they're back. And even if you attribute, the Cam Rising injury to why they were so bad last year, I think the conference will still get the credit for a Utah that I think, again, will finish in the top 5 of the league.
All right, BYU, great year last year. They did not lose a ton talent-wise to graduation or to transfer or anything else. Now they do have this huge question looming over the future of Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback, who, look, he helped them win games. He was a good player for them. He was not the reason, certainly not in a singular format, why they were such a good team last year. It was very much not a big superstar-driven kind of roster. Tell me what you like about BYU and maybe what you're worried about.
Yeah, and the last thing, I forgot to mention this on Utah, and you know this, but Utah also has like 2, maybe even 3 NFL players along their offensive line, which is usually a pretty good place to start.
Yes.
Especially if you're going to have a more run-heavy offense with a more run-heavy quarterback. So, yeah, that's also part of it. They have the best tackle in the conference and arguably in the country, or certainly one of them. In terms of BYU, yeah, I mean, look, this is a program that doesn't get the national respect, and certainly not last year. I mean, I still think it's egregious that they weren't even part of the conversation when it came to the playoff. Maybe losing, to my alma mater, Kansas, was the reason for that. But I think the Jayhawks were a lot better of a football team than their 5-7 record would indicate, and especially at that point in the season. But I digress. They bring back, again, as you mentioned, most of their roster. They were really active in the portal. They did, bring in Tanavasu, the Utah transfer. They bring in Kirkland, who was arguably the best defensive player for Oklahoma State last year. It doesn't say much, but he's a big-time player, probably an NFL-type player in the middle of the defensive line. And then for me, what Jay Hill did coming over from Weber State, not only in transforming that defense, year one under Jay Hill, the defense was not very good. Last year, though, was a dramatic step forward for this team. And the reason I thought that they were as good as they were. But the secret sauce to me with Hill has been the players that he's brought with him from Weber State. It's like each and every year there's a new guy they bring. They become hugely impactful along the defense, and then they leave. And Jack Kelly returns, this year. It's another guy that was with Jay Hill from Weber State. So I think what they lose, Batty, that's a huge loss for them. They didn't have a ton of sacks last year along their defense, and Batty was the guy that had the majority of the production. So I think that's a big loss. They've got to find ways to get to the quarterback, and hopefully they think they've got that with what they did in the portal. Look, Retzloff, in my book, going into last year, it was a huge question mark. I think he improved fairly dramatically. He's got to make another improvement this year because, look, I think in the games they lost, like the Kansas game, take that game, he makes a few more plays and they win the game. It sort of came down to their quarterback needed to make plays in order for them to win, and he didn't. That's it, And then, as you mentioned, the allegations that are hanging over him and how much will that impact, not just whether he's going to get suspended or not, and I'm not sure without criminal charges that will be the case, but it's not nothing in terms of the locker room, in terms of the drama and whatever else this creates. So it's hard to say that it will not have an impact because it will. It absolutely will. Even without any charges or anything else being brought, these are human beings that are involved here. So, preseason wise, they're going to be top 5, I think, across most lists because of what they did last year and who they return. But I think they might take a step back this year. Also, their schedule is very, very tough. They have one of the toughest schedules in the nation. It's hard to predict because as we've seen so much parity in the Big 12, like you may have looked at the Utah game on your schedule last year and thought that was a tough game. And then obviously as it came to fruition, it didn't end up being as tough as it probably should have been or would be in this future season. So same with Oklahoma State. Last year, Oklahoma State was picked by a lot to finish at the top of the league. And, that was a walkover game. So it's so hard to predict, but I think based on, certain predictions or certain things that BYU has one of the tougher schedules. So I think BYU could improve as a team, but even not have as many wins this next year.
Look, I think that there's 7 teams that could potentially win the Big 12 conference. Certain people are really high on Texas Tech because of their portal work. There's a bunch of folks that like, Kansas, your alma mater, as you mentioned, as a dark horse. Arizona State is kind of the lead dog in the race for most people, but they're without Cam Scatterbo. I'm more of a skeptic than most are, even though I love Dillingham. Who do you think wins it all?
Yeah, and look, I think 7's probably a good number. Iowa State's one that they played Arizona State in the Big 12 championship game last year. They bring back their quarterback. I'm pretty bullish on Rocco Becht. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in this league. So I'll probably pick Arizona State, but I think your point about Scatterbo, Scatterbo was the offense. He was the entire offensive ecosystem. So you remove him, you have to have a new offense based now on your quarterback. I think a lot more can be put on Levitt, but there's just no way to replace a guy like Scatterbo, who is your entire offensive ecosystem. Everything that happened came off of what he was able to do. But yeah, I'm almost going to be picking Arizona State to win the league on wishful thinking from the standpoint of the league needs more consistency at the top. Like when you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, the strength of those conferences is the fact that it's Ohio State and Michigan every year at the top of the Big Ten, that it's Georgia and Alabama at the top of the SEC. And so like everybody thinks the SEC is so good because they're judged by the strength at the top. And even though Texas and OU, like Texas was not nearly as good as they were over the last decade as they were on their way out, but Oklahoma dominated this league. And so they were the litmus test for the rest of the league. How'd you do against Oklahoma? The league hasn't had that for the last 2 years. It's been so much parity where teams go from being one of the worst in the Big 12 to the best. So I think the league, in terms of getting that national recognition and love, needs to be better and more consistent at the top. But I mean, yeah, I take Texas Tech. I think they have a big question mark with their new offensive coordinator coming in because Zach Kittley is now gone as the head coach at Florida Atlantic. I mentioned Iowa State. Utah should very well factor into that discussion again, based on what we just talked about. I do think Kansas is a dark horse, but they lose a ton. And Jalen Daniels had some issues last year with turnovers, and he's had injury issues in his past as well. The one thing I'll say overall about this league is how good the quarterback play is. We have not seen the league be this good top to bottom with quarterbacks, and a lot of that's because of returning players. No league. I mean, you look at the Big Ten and Ohio State and Michigan, they're breaking in 2 brand new quarterbacks. Same with Alabama and Georgia. I mean, so the usual suspects who are, at the top of everybody's preseason top 10 or top 25 don't have consistency at quarterback. The Big 12 does. I mean, there are very few teams. Like Utah is one of the few that's not returning quarterback, and obviously that's good news. And he's a guy that might as well be returning because he's got his offensive coordinator with him. So, yeah, I mean, I think the strength of this league now is the quarterback, which is huge because over the last couple of years it's been running back.
What does the and look, we'll revisit this. We'll talk about it a month from now at Big 12 Media Days, I'm sure. But what do you think the decision ends up being on the college football playoff format?
And I was in Orlando last week for the Big 12 spring meetings, and this was obviously a huge talking point. I liked that the league, number one, came out, unanimously in support of something. And that, like, you look at these other leagues, and there's no unanimous support of anything amongst the other leagues. So I think, like, the fact that there's a clear message that all the athletic directors and coaches are in agreement on this stuff, and there's, a consistent voice is huge for this league. I think we end up with the 5+11 model. It feels like it's trending more and more in that direction. That's the league. That's the model the Big 12 likes. The problem I have with it is history suggests to me that you're not going to get more than 2 bids on average over the next 10 years. And that's why I like the 4-4-2 better. Like, I love the idea of proven on the field. The problem is this league has been on the wrong side of snubs, historically speaking. And again, this is a perception thing. This is not a reality thing. In this case, perception is reality. The BYU wasn't even part of the discussion last year. Alabama and Ole Miss were the 2 big snubs, and you can argue that BYU had a much better resume than either of those 2 snubs. Like, this should be a good indication to us that, like, if you look at the next 10 years, and look, a lot of things can change, and a lot of things will change. So maybe this is moot. But in my opinion, if I'm projecting the next 10 years, would you think in a basically where the Big 12 is going to get 1 automatic bid, and then there's 11 at-large bids, do you think on average the Big 12 would get over or under 2 bids over the next 10 years?
Cool. I mean,
do you think over or under two bids in the next decade?
Under or like at 2? If you said 2.5, I would say under for sure.
Yeah. So why not just take the 2?
Yeah. No, you're right.
I agree.
You're not wrong. I think that there's 2 conversations here, and I find myself falling into the trap of being like, why do you automatically get 4? You're not more important than everyone else. But then also the reality is like, but you are, right? Like the Big Ten and the SEC, they are. That's where the best coaches, players, teams, NIL funds, all that kind of stuff is. So yeah, I mean,
no, it's a joke. It is a joke. It is a joke for 2 leagues to get 8 bids out of a 16-team playoff. It's an absolute joke. But if I'm looking out for the best interests of the Big 12, I just don't think you're getting to a situation with 11 at-large bids that you end up with 3 bids. Maybe you have 1 year where you get 3 total bids. Maybe you have 2 years you get 3 total bids. I would love to be wrong, and maybe Texas Tech will win with a completely rebuilt roster through the portal, and that will upend this blue chip ratio thing. But right now, where the college football sits, every team that's won a national championship over in the modern era of recruiting has had at least 50% of the roster be 4 or 5-star recruits. The Big 12 doesn't have anybody there. Colorado, 2 years in with Dion, has 2 recruiting classes that are there, but that's going to take 2 more years to even get part of it. So, like, if Texas Tech – so I say all that to say, like, maybe Texas Tech will upend that historical stat, and suddenly all bets are off, and now you could spend a bunch of money and win that way, or there's other ways to win, and maybe that helps to bring more, a larger perception, a better perception of the Big 12. But like where we sit today, it's hard for me to believe that the Big 12 will ever be in a position to get 3 bids in a 11 at-large bid situation.
You make a very strong case, and I'm a little bit mad at you for now making me think that the 4-4-2 is better.
It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And by the way, the 3 at-large bids in that situation, where do you think they're going?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
4 is the minimum.
It's
the minimum.
Yeah, it's Notre Dame and SEC, right. And that's what it is.
Yep.
Oh, exactly. You're right, Ari. I appreciate your time today. I look forward to our next conversation. I'm assuming we'll see you in a month, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it could not be a quicker drive for me. I live in North Dallas, so I'm excited to not have to drive to Arlington.
Yeah, well, we will be on a plane, and we will see you there. Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to it, brother. Take care.
Ari Temkin on the Sean O'Connell Show. Talked a little Rams. We are now a Rams affiliate here in our ESPN family. 103.9, 98.3 ESPN The Fan. Our sibling station is Utah's home of the LA Rams. Ari helped facilitate that, and, of course, you'll hear him and see him around Big 12 football all year long as well. All right, a really cool quote from Derek Carr and some news that we just talked about with Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Live Night Events presenting our 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai. That's Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Go to ESPN700sports.com. Learn more about outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City's Granary District. ESPN700sports.com. TaylorMade QI35 woods are also available right now at Uinta Golf. 4th generation of carbon wood technology. Driver that unlocks a new level of distance at Uinta Golf. Uinta Golf, the presenters of our PGA Tour leaderboard updates. We just spoke a little NFL, a little college football with Ari Temkin. While we were having that conversation, the news broke that Aaron Rodgers is signing a 1-year deal, as many anticipated, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. I think that there are a few examples in sports right now that are better examples of a star player who is no longer worth the hassle. There's just too much. Now, the Steelers are going to have to say, Aaron, you can't go on the Pat McAfee show every single week. Aaron, you can't, spend a bunch of time talking about your desire to host Jeopardy. Just be with us for this year and focus on football. And it's an opportunity for him to step away from all that other stuff, to silence the doubters in the conversation about how the game has passed you by. He's still a good football player when he could be healthy. So just go in and grind and do the things that made you good when you were in Green Bay as a young player. I know it's hard. I'm 41 years old also. All right? Your priorities are different. Aaron Rodgers is a weird guy.
Yeah.
That ayahuasca stuff, by the way, I'm sure many of the people who listen have tried some of it. Some people, it alters your brain chemistry permanently. You can't convince me otherwise. I know people. It's pretty active, and there's a lot of it going on in the gym community. I know people, and I know these are only anecdotal stories, who were a certain way before they went on that journey or started those journeys and are now a different way. Like, sometimes it just changes you. And I don't know if that's why Aaron Rodgers is such a weirdo now. Maybe it's just because, he got bored with football. Maybe he's a normal athlete, and at 41 years old, he's not what he used to be. I mean, there's a lot more reasonable explanations, I suppose, than ayahuasca. But Aaron Rodgers is staying in the NFL at age 41. There's absolutely nothing you can do with a team as limited as Pittsburgh that is going to improve your legacy. You're not going to win a Super Bowl. You're not. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's going to require that he kind of disappears from our consciousness for a little while. I asked the question about overexposure, celebrity overexposure on the show today. He's the kind of celebrity overexposure that you never wanted to see. The more you heard Aaron Rodgers, the more you saw Aaron Rodgers, the less appealing Aaron Rodgers was as a football player. And I don't even mind have a lot of his stances on things. I just don't need to hear it, man. Just be the quarterback. Anyway, so that's news in the National Football League. I also wanted to give this quote. This is from Derek Carr. He was asked why he decided to walk away, why he decided to retire instead of staying on the roster, trying to go through this season with the New Orleans Saints. And look, say what you want about Derek Carr as a player. A lot of the reports out there, and everything that I've heard, and I'm sure that there's other stories too, but that, he's just a really high-quality person. He's just a nice guy. There's these anecdotal stories about how, someone broke down on the side of the road in Oakland, California or whatever. They're trying to change the tire. Somebody pulls over to help them change the tire. They look up, and it's the starting quarterback of the Oakland Raiders, Derek Carr. That actually might have happened in Las Vegas. But in whatever case, right, it's just like he portrays this kind of strong Christian, humble background, and a lot of the stories about him support that. Not pretending I know everything about him, but he was asked why not stay on the roster. They owed him like $30 million.
Yeah, he signed that big deal when he got traded back in 2020.
He was, in the second year of a $100-something million deal.
Of a 3-year deal.
He was going to be $30 million quarterback this year, which now is a bargain in the NFL. But he knew he couldn't start. He knew he wasn't going to be a full-time starter for them. He's having shoulder problems. He said he's going to need surgery on the shoulder. And by the way, you can still stay on the roster and collect at least part of your paycheck under NFL contract rules if you're on IR.
Isn't there like a reserve, like retirement reserve too?
And they said, "Well, why didn't you do that?"
Yeah.
And he said this, and I admire this. I never played just for the money. I had a whole bunch of people tell me how crazy I was for walking away. Man, I would never have done that. That's cool, but I've gained these things that the world has to, all these things that the world has to offer. It doesn't really do anything for your heart. I knew my heart was at peace, and that's really all that mattered. I mean, most of us, if we had an opportunity, like if I developed laryngitis permanently and contractually I'm allowed to still collect my salary, I'm probably not saying, all right, I'm retiring, don't give me the money. Most people don't do that. Even professional athletes, even very, very wealthy people don't walk away from free money. And he did because it was the right thing for him to do. I mean, I maybe would have been like, if you're going to walk away from the money, just like keep the money and give it to charity or something. The Saints don't need the dang money. But I admire it. I understand on some level why it mattered to him to do it, quote, the right way. Because you got to wake up, you got to look at yourself in the mirror every day. And he's able to do that, whatever that means for him. I thought that was pretty cool. We'll take one more break. We'll come back with one more segment. Hopefully we'll have a little chat with Spence Checketts as the drive is coming up next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show closing out on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Wrapping things up here on the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk. We've got NBA Finals basketball on later tonight. We are your home with the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. Now, the announcement made today that we are also, this coming football season, on the ESPN radio networks. We are the home of the LA Rams, 103.9, 98.3, The Fan. Utah's home of the LA Rams. So we're just doing what we can. Provide you with the sports you want to hear. NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and now the NFL regular season, at least for the Rams. Want to update you on some polls we took today. They're still going to remain active through this evening, but here are the results on the questions I asked. Come on. Slow computer. All right. SGA, Shade Gilgeous-Alexander, is blank. You fill in the blank. Already a superstar? A superstar if OKC wins. Not a superstar either way. 2/3 of you say that he's already a superstar. 22% say he's a superstar if Oklahoma City wins. 11% say he's not a superstar in the NBA either way. That shocks me. Tyrese Halliburton, same question. 43% say Tyrese Halliburton is already a superstar. 37% say he's a superstar if Indiana wins. 20% of people say he is not a superstar either way. And I asked the question of what's the best example of superstar overexposure? Because who is asking for more Stephen A. Smith? He signed a deal for not one but 2 radio shows with SiriusXM. They cleared regular working people off the roster in order to make room for Stephen A. Allegedly $15 million extra dollars coming his way. 1 sports show, 1 non-sports show. That is overexposure to me at its finest. But there are also people that I enjoy that have been overexposed. The Rock is, I think, the best example that came in. Not as much this year, but like 2 years ago, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was in literally everything. Shaq coming in for Brett McCormick on Twitter. John Cena. John Cena has been everywhere as well. But John Cena has great fashion sense. He wears jean shorts. I'm wearing some today. Spence Checketts and The Drive are coming up next. Hi, Spence.
You know, I forgot to ask you about your jean shorts love because your lovely bride sent out on Instagram the Insta poll you sent out on Twitter.
Yeah.
As the O'Connell family is very savvy with social, apparently, pleading your followers to go tell you to please stop wearing your jean shorts.
Yes. She hates them.
She's right.
No.
Yes,
no,
she
not.
is. She is absolutely
No.
It's Kendall, right?
Yes.
Kendall, if you're listening, does she still listen to you on the radio?
No.
It's
No.
amazing when
Absolutely not.
your family and friends are like, oh, you're on the radio. Cool. Man, I'll have to listen to that. That lasts like 2 weeks.
They don't.
I checked out your first couple of shows. I've moved on. But Kendall, if you're listening, or if anybody who knows Kendall is listening, you are right. And Sean, you are so wrong. And it strikes me even more odd that you don't have any underwear to cover with jean shorts because there's a certain faction of our state that needs jean shorts to cover their underwear.
Yeah.
And you do not.
No, I just like jean shorts because they're amazing.
They're not. What about them are amazing?
Well, we all love blue jeans, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple pair of blue jeans.
Yeah,
I
blue
enjoy.
jeans are awesome.
Yeah,
And then if you just make them shorts, they're equally as awesome or arguably more so.
No, you're not giving any solid reasoning here.
I just like them, Spence.
What's your take on
They go with everything.
What about cargo shorts?
Cargo shorts, the pockets are sometimes handy, but I don't like them.
The pockets are handy, but I'm stunned that you love jean shorts and not cargo shorts because most people that have pairs of jean shorts also have several pair of cargo shorts.
I have a pair of cargo shorts also because sometimes those pockets do come in handy. But it's a totally different profile, right? It puffs out. It makes you look fatter. They're not great.
Well, and also you're a father of 3, and so at this point, wear the jean shorts and wear them proudly.
Right.
Nobody gives a rip.
I cannot impress anybody anyway. If I allow my wife to pick my wardrobe, she's still not impressed by how I look. So
yeah,
I'm going to wear what I like.
Yeah, like if you were on apps, you wouldn't want the dating profile pic to be of you in jean shorts.
I would.
I don't think you would, man.
I would.
I venture to guess that single Sean was not presenting himself as a front-facing fan of jorts. I'm going to go out on a limb there.
It's been so long ago, I can't remember.
Hey, whatever you did, it worked. You attracted a lovely bride, and you and her are raising 3 beautiful children together. So whatever your game was back in the day, Sean, it certainly worked.
I wonder how early I introduced her to my jorts. Look,
don't say it like that.
I have
gross.
I have had 2 pair of jorts disappear under dubious circumstances.
Nice, Kendall. Good work. Good work, my dear.
These are actually new.
You bought a new. Where do they sell those? Walgreens, Target.
Ross. I got them at Ross.
Shout out Ross.
Yeah,
great discounted clothing.
I love a good TJ Maxx or Ross.
May I point something out real quick based off your Insta poll? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is about to become the 4th player to win MVP, Finals MVP, and the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Maybe.
Are you going to try to make this? Are you going to do what the Sports Center anchors are doing because they work for ESPN to try to make the NBA Finals interesting?
Chet Holmgren might win Finals MVP.
You want to put some jorts on it?
Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers might pull off the upset. Gordy Chiesa thinks so.
Okay, well, if Gordy thinks so, that he's beyond reproach. Listen to Gordy, don't listen to me, period, end of story. I feel like this is over in 5, and I feel like the easiest bet, if you're into such things, entertainment purposes only, OKC in 5, Shai winning MVP. Point is this. If Shai does what I truly believe he's going to do, it's not about him being a superstar. It's about him being in the Hall of Fame right now at the age of 26.
Okay. So
I don't know how
superstar for you.
Oh, has been. This is not new.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But the definition of what a superstar is, especially in the NBA, varies for certain people. Varies for people.
Does the MVP winner, is that a piece of criteria that typically falls in line with a superstar player?
Well, if you look at the history of the NBA MVP award, most of the time the guy who wins it is a bona fide superstar.
Sure. With 0 exceptions, I believe.
Is Joel Embiid a superstar?
For sure.
Okay. Gordy said no. I don't think he is.
Okay,
He's too hurt all the time.
Again, whatever Gordy says, listen to that.
And but then you have to go back pretty far to when like Bob McAdoo won it, and he was not a superstar.
Did Gordy say Bob McAdoo was not a superstar?
He said he was like absolutely not.
Okay.
With Embiid, he was just like, no, he's not because he's hurt too much, which I agree with.
Yeah, the health issue certainly is a thing. It's interesting. There are 2 bigs in the past like 10, 15 years that coming out of college, very smart basketball people were like, they're different than anything I've ever seen. One was Cat. If you go back to his freshman year at Kentucky, you watch his freshman year at Kentucky highlights, it's like, dude, I've never seen that before. And the other was Embiid. After he kind of entered the league and people realized he was the 4th pick, he wasn't 1. That was Wiggins that year. That was the Wiggins-Jabari draft. Okay, so he went 4th. But it's because people didn't realize what an offensive juggernaut he was at his size. But once people started realizing that, it's like, we've never seen anything like this either. Now, Gordy's point about his health certainly should be taken into consideration. Not wrong there. But he is so intoxicating when he's healthy, and that's why Philly continues to say he is not going anywhere because they believe if they can get 1 year, seriously, just because if you go back and look at his career, even the regular seasons where he had relative good health, he broke down in the postseason. They believe that if they can get 1 good year of Embiid health, like if he can play 65 to 70 games and give them 4 series of full health, that they can win a championship. That's how good he is.
So Spence, he trusts the process. Other people do as well. A more salient question.
Wait, is it indelicate and salient?
Tyrese Halliburton, already a superstar, will be if Indy wins, or not a superstar either way.
Yeah, I analyzed him a tier below superstar players. He's really good. Now, if they win the championship and he wins Finals MVP, of course, you put him on that level because it's such a rare achievement, and so many of the greatest players we've ever seen never won championships, including the 2 best players we had here. There are way too many games. Like, there's a good chance tonight. Both these 2 teams are young. We're going to see really sloppy play. In the 2 games they played this year, and take it for what it's worth, Halliburton, 11 points a game, 5 assists. Oklahoma City is very well built to shut down perimeter offensive initiators. And there are a lot of games where Halliburton just looks like a dude, just looks like one of the guys on the team. And then he'll have one of those games where he goes for like 34 and 15. You're like, wait a second. Why doesn't he do this as consistently as other players that are on that tier? So, look, if this is a 6 or a 7 game series, even if Indiana doesn't win, if they can extend it to 6 or 7, because they're such massive underdogs, and they should be, and Halliburton steps up every single game, I think he'll put himself on a level. But look, he's been an all-star. He's been an Olympian. Like, he's really good. But I don't view him like I view Steph or LeBron or Jokic or Giannis or Luka. Like, I don't.
Or SGA.
Or SGA, correct. I don't put Tyrese on that level right now, but he could change that narrative with a good finals run.
Which is one of the reasons maybe to watch this series if you actually care about market size, which I'm not convinced that any fan in any sport actually does care about market size.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Pacers, OKC, that starts tonight. I imagine you'll be previewing that a little bit on the show.
Yeah, we have Game 1 of the NBA Finals, and we have both Tim Bontemps and Dave McMenamin, which is a really cool thing. So 2 of the guys that are actually on site. Our guy Paul Pugmire, as you know, it's the RBC Canadian Open this week for the PGA Tour. Do you have a favorite to win it?
Tony Finau is always my favorite to win it.
All right. He's not playing that well right now, but I like that you cheer for the local guys.
He's always my favorite.
I love Tony. I just learn how to putt, man. Go freaking put in some work. I'm so sick of Tony missing 3-foot birdie putts. It's killing me.
Mulligans, man. Let's go. A little mini golf.
You want to go?
I love mini golf. I don't love golf.
I got a tee time Saturday at Bonnie. Want to come play?
Is that mini golf?
No, it is a big boy golf.
No, thank you.
Okay. Bell Frazier from the Trib. Game 1, dude. I said this yesterday. Hockey's new to our market. If you have not watched the Stanley Cup playoffs, watch the final. Overtime again last night. These 2 teams. And I'm starting to feel like all of the interviews leading up to Game 1, none of them were laced with, like, I don't like them. We played them last year. But if you watched last night, there's a little something brewing. I think this is going to be a really good series. I'm not sure they like each other as much as they let on.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad that they don't. And I was so impressed that, like, Florida's physicality has just destroyed everyone else's game plans all through these playoffs. And Edmonton hit them as much as they were hit last night. And I thought that was fantastic because Edmonton has more of that offensive finesse type reputation. And, of course, Florida is what Florida is. And there were several moments in that game where it was the Oilers who checked somebody off a possession and off a puck, and it was just like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could do it for 7 games against that particular team, but you kept home ice by winning Game 1 in Edmonton.
And that crowd was awesome. I mean, inside, outside. By the way, Sam Bennett, free agent. Utah Mammoth. They could use a veteran forward. Free agent, couple goals last night. So, yeah, a lot of that.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.